All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. We're glad to have you guys here. So tonight, for those who don't know, we have a special triple panel that will be guiding us through the design process of their final thesis project. And this session is entitled 5 Questions with the X Unit. This session tonight will be different from the ones we had before because it will be in a style of a forum. So if you want to ask questions, you can go ahead and raise a hand and open up your mic whenever you like, or you can just type it in the chat box. We will also be having a closing ceremony at the end of the session, so make sure you stay tuned. But before we start our event, I would like to call upon Afif to recite our prayers.
Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you, Afif. So without wasting any time, I'll pass the mic to the X Unit.
Hello, boleh dengar ke?
Boleh.
Okay. So first and foremost, thank you to the review committee and everyone involved for inviting us for this discussion that we'll be having today. So first and foremost, of course, for those yang tak kenal, nama saya Ashhar bin Haidar. You guys can call me Ash. And then we also have Zamir bin Zainuddin, which you can call Mir. And then we have Diana AMALEENA, in which you can call Amal. So the three of us were invited today to be the panels of today's discussion, in which involves our sharing of our design thesis. Now, we kind of changed up the format a bit. Hopefully you guys are okay with that. The reason as to why is because we thought, personally for me, because not share a thorough design thesis presentation within the time span of 2 hours might not be able to fulfill the curiosity that all you guys have actually when only dedicated to one speaker. And what I mean by that is that it's more entitled to the purpose of today's discussion. We wanted to showcase the diversity of our projects, in which even through the differences in methods that we've achieved or that we've utilized throughout the 1 year that we spent on the design thesis, Alhamdulillah, we was all still able to achieve, inshallah, a satisfying result. Now that is subjective to the opinions of the individuals and also the judges, but however, to us, as of this point, Alhamdulillah, everything has been going okay. So just nak clarify also, sebenarnya kalau considerkan dalam kita punya studio, DX unit, ramai je lagi sebenarnya yang boleh bagi this presentation today. But just because of the matter of the major diversity within our 3 projects, we were selected as the candidates for today's discussion. So first and beforehand, we apologize kalau ada apa-apa yang lacking on our behalves. Tapi insyaAllah, as the discussion today is in the format of a forum, we invite you guys kalau boleh nak sembang sekali dengan kita orang sebenarnya. I apologize also to the committee if this may be too informal. We'll try our best to be professional throughout. Tapi at the same time, we want to make sure that information is relayed thoroughly to the audience as well as amongst us 3 as well. So let's see. Let's move on. So basically, I'll showcase first basically the slides, in which will then be continued by AMALEENA. So yeah, basically the title of today's forum discussion is 5 questions with DX unit. So basically the whole question will pretty much break down the entire of our design thesis. Sama, may you continue?
Right. Just as a brief introduction, let me just briefly explain each of us punya approach ni macam mana. So for example, Ashhar here, his approach is more on the philosophical side, where he studies more on phenomenology, how he interprets the interior design and the exterior design to achieve that. So for Zamir, his approach is more on a new approach of a salvage yard, integrating into a museum and a auto recycle place. And for me, I'm more on the regenerative approach, how a building responds to the site in a way to mitigate the effects of climate change. So as you can see, the three of us has different approach, just to showcase that in design there's no right or wrong. You can start off from basically anywhere. So from there, Zamir will explain what are the 5 questions that we will explain tonight in the talk tonight. So Zamir.
Okay, thank you, Amal. So for the talk session for today, dia akan consist of 5 questions lah. So the first one is kita akan cakap on how the journey begin, basically on how the project initiated. So all the issues or semua benda tu akan yang driven, yang akan inject to the preliminary punya part of the design itself. Kemudian next is the governing philosophy. So basically all those some philosophy yang each one of us basically hold on to from start of the design until to the final completion of the design lah. Next, basically this third new chapter, we will talk about how we consider all those site contexts and basically the reality parts of the design. And then on the fourth chapter, we will talk about the 3 elements and previously, how we integrate and how we come up with somehow maybe frameworks for some, maybe design strategies and all those kind of yang akan move on towards the design scheme yang final. And the fifth one is to realize a vision. So basically we will talk about all the recently punya submitted punya design yang finalnya. So that's going to be our flow for today, for the 5 things yang kita akan sembang. Okay, so next, moving on.
Okay, so yeah, basically just jumping into what Zami just mentioned tadi. All the things yang kita akan basically explain today actually governs the entire scope of our design thesis. It's just maybe not as thorough as it should be for the purpose of today's discussion. Tapi hopefully it will be enough to fill you guys' curiosity for those yang akan come up with your own design thesis later, atau yang maybe yang nak sambung masters and so on and so forth. So these are pretty much our perspectives on what we went through lah, basically. It's basically what we're trying to explain today. So just one more thing I just mentioned, just in case I forgot if I mentioned just now. Tapi though, kalau boleh, today's discussion kita orang nak a two-way conversation rather than just us three talking. So kalau at any point of the discussion, kalau you guys are interested in anything of the things that we said, wanted to share you guys your experience juga, anything of the sort, you guys can just jump in, raise a hand, jump in, and then we'll talk it out together. I think that would be more fun lah, and more educational lah, kan, rather than just listening and then, you know, not coming up to a full experience. So okay, basically I'll introduce the first question today. So how did the journey begin? So basically what it explains is because architectural ideas can come from anywhere, betul tak? So it can from, for some people dia datang daripada issues, for some people dia datang daripada concepts, for other people philosophies, for other people their own passion, their own interest, an event or history that they've had with a particular element or subject. So it can come from anywhere. So this is just showcasing our perspectives of that. So without further ado, Amal, how about you share with us how you started your design actually?
All right, thanks Ash. But before that, I would like to apologize because I have to turn off my camera from time to time. The internet is not stable here. So, okay. Can I share my screen? Ash? Okay, all right.
Yeah, apologies.
All right. Okay, is it showing?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So basically how I started my project. Have you guys ever heard of a statement, orang Sarawak tinggal atas pokok? Like, have you heard of that before?
Honestly, tak lah.
Okay.
Oh,
Ada.
benar.
Okay.
Oh, tak,
So
tak.
like
Ada.
ada kan. So orang Sarawak tinggal atas pokok ni is something that us Sarawakians are used to. So sometimes statement tu boleh bawa gaduh lah sebenarnya. But actually it got me thinking that we do actually have a lot of trees in Sarawak. Basically everywhere you go you see greeneries. But when I study deeper into it, we are actually losing the trees that we have. Actually Sarawak has lost 2.94 million hectares of trees. So that's basically this the main starting point of the whole thesis project. So just to explain a bit on my poster here, this is an abstract poster. So doing things that are abstract is obviously is not my forte, but what I was trying to achieve here is to show that the importance of implementation, the importance of conserving the environment, because everything starts with the mindset. If we think something that it's important, that's the route that we will go towards. So we have to realize this before things before it gets too late, before it can't be turned back. So that's basically about the poster. So it brings the question, what gets left behind for the future generations? So this is just a project brief, just to explain a bit on the approach of the design. So my project is entitled Borneo's Terrarium, a regenerative environmental youth hub in Santubong, Kuching. So terrarium, if I can highlight, terrarium here is actually the glass casement where we used to protect the plants, where we allow the plants to strive to grow by themselves. So in a way, it's a metaphorical approach for this design thesis, as it acts as a terrarium for Borneo itself. So why? It's because we actually have less than 10 years left to mitigate the effects of climate change as a result of irresponsible human activities. So the location that I've chosen is in Sarawak, because that's one of the location where we experience a lot loss amount of trees. And actually in Santubong here we have a lot of nature-based attractions, which suits the ambience that I seek for the project. Who the target users? So I was thinking macam who are the suitable target users? So in this case, I'm focusing more on the youth, because majority of the people in Sarawak is actually the youth, which is 43.5%. And actually majority of that, 27.91%, is actually in Kuching, as the future of Sarawak lies in the youth. So how this will be achieved is through programs. And actually these programs I come up based on my supervisor at Putri Mayang suggested me to watch the movie Biodome. So from that movie I've learned that sometimes people, they have to experience the feeling of loss before they can strive to be better. So in a way, that's how I approach in the programs, divided into three, which is T1 Educate. And then this is where they are thought about the importance of nature conservation. T2 Interpret is more on the platform where they can actually exercise what they have learned in T1 Educate. And T3 Execute is a hands-on activities where they can actually do the activities are provided in the project. So from there, as I mentioned before, the issue is in terms of climate change. So as you can see here, Gordon Brown, he is the UN Special Envoy, former Prime Minister UK. He mentioned that the deforestation in Sarawak is one of history's worst environmental crimes. So climate change is actually a huge issue to tackle. So my approach for this is by breaking it down into three small issues. The first one being food security. The second one is low environmental awareness. And the third one is disengagement with nature. So in terms of food security, 80% of global deforestation is a result of agricultural production. And Sarawak is one of the top contributors of the national agriculture sector. And agriculture and climate change, they are actually deeply intertwined. In terms of the low environmental awareness, the state finds it very challenging to raise awareness in terms of environmental conservation, and high awareness is actually needed to protect the environment. And the third one is the disengagement with nature. So the deficiency of daily interaction with nature, it impacts on the way people perceive and value nature. So basically, all these issues, the things that triggered me to go towards this direction, it's actually macam every student has their own different spark to start off a project. So my approach, I'm pretty sure it's very different from what Ash and Zamir approach is. So Zamir.
Sorry,
Oh
man.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
just to butt in. Now that I'm actually listening to your design thesis,
yeah.
it got me interested to ask. How long have you been interested in this form of like research in terms of greens when incorporating within your architecture? So, but yeah, is it something that you just started masa time master or masa time degree pun you dah start belajar dah pasal green and then you just develop your passion ke apa?
Okay, so actually, I think my friends during my degree can vouch for this. Every time they see a building with a green roof or with a lot of trees, they would know that, oh, this is Amal's project. It's just because I'm really prone to that type of design because Tom Main, the founder of Morphosis, he mentioned that a building, he likes to see the building merges with the site context, merge with the existing context lah. So for me, a building should sit together with nature because it can't just macam be very independent on its own. So for me, a building that has this type of integration is the type of approach that I've been going for since my degree, and for my master, I have the opportunity to study even deeper. That's why I'm going towards the regenerative approach. So yeah, that's basically
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my
Syafiq
approach.
Ahmad. Syafiq Ahmad, buka mic kalau ada. Anyways,
So
okay. Thank you,
so
Ahmad.
yeah, so that's basically how my interest started. So
Okay.
Zamir, for your project Wasteland, how did it spark your idea to do that?
Okay, so present dulu
Ni yang dinanti-nantikan Zamir Zainuddin.
So lepas tu for my particular project, nampak tak? Okay kan, nampak kan?
Saya tak keluar lagi je.
Nampak. Keluar.
Nampak kan?
Aku yang slow.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, so for my project, basically there are two main things lah yang basically I focus on, which is the first thing yang derived for this thesis adalah because I was searching for benda yang I can continue on doing for 1 year, yang maybe yang actually yang tak rasa boring lah, kalau boleh tak nak rasa that kind of menyesal on halfway through the process. So maybe I was thinking of incorporating ataupun nak tackle on the part of cars, kereta. So but then I was thinking yang kalau kereta, what can actually a design thesis for kereta boleh dibuat? Usually people akan buat maybe for museum whatsoever. But then for me, in my opinion, I think that benda tu maybe we can explore more because we doing simply museum for exhibition. But then I want to dive deeper into maybe something that we call as issue yang datang daripada kereta sendiri. Kemudian what I found is adalah the issues of too many cars. So I want to lupa nak full screen mode. Okay, so the issues of too many cars. So basically this is the main thing, too many cars. Jadi there are banyak benda yang following up yang branch from the issue of too many cars tu banyak. So contohnya macam of course environmental issues yang rise. Tapi yang one of the thing yang main dia adalah on okay, when we talk about environmental issues, benda tu relate towards macam mana solution apa ataupun what the people yang orang dah invent to solve that environmental issues yang arrive from basically too many cars. Contohnya macam there is a currently transition to the electric vehicles. So electric vehicles ni EV. So EV currently kita tengok dah start to rise up towards dia punya nak tackle issue too many cars. Maksudnya environmental issues yang rise lah kan. Tapi but then of course kalau kita buat juga EV, maksudnya kereta EV, tak ke benda tu still kita produce cars. But then how macam mana kita nak reduce the amount of cars tu? So what I think is to incorporate auto recycling with in a way satu lagi EV jugalah. So maksudnya in a way untuk to solve the issue of too many cars, auto recycling is the issue. But then on the environmental part is the electric vehicles. But then after yang in the later stage, I will explain on how I integrate dia punya on the electric vehicles and also the recycling punya auto recycling punya part. Tapi apa yang I mentioned before is all those semua tu hanya general issue. but then how can in architecturally, I think before macam architecturally how what are the things yang I can actually explore ataupun actually try to solve. Then I found out then there's an issue of sorry, where's the slide? There's an issue of salvage yard, yang di mana salvage yard ni perlu di-redefine ataupun perlu di-revamp because of especially in context of Malaysia, it is particularly misinterpreted. Contohnya macam it is actually salvage yard is basically a tempat actually untuk recycle kereta lah. Tapi kalau dekat Malaysia, it's more like tempat kepada jadi junkyard lah, maksudnya tempat of kereta-kereta yang dah rosak akan dikumpul di situ dan akan di scrap dan benda tu tak di properly utilize. The not just the cars ataupun all the components yang dah di scrap dan di recycle, tapi lebih kepada on the architectural wise, maksudnya on the typology itself, a salvage yard, macam mana benda tu di utilize. So that's yang the thesis itself yang title Wasteland Salvage Yard and Museum. So the museum part tu adalah just untuk for me incorporate dia macam tambah on the part of complexity to the project lah. Maksudnya dia tak on, bukan saya buat kilang, it's not that I'm doing just a factory, tapi but then also ada involved, dia ada human involvement in the project itself. So dia ada that complexity lah yang we must consider, not just cost, also the human aspect. So basically that's how I start the design lah.
Actually, hello Zamir.
Okay.
I have a question. Sorry ganggu. Dia macam masa you during your research kan pasal your issue, pasal like how we produce so many cars. In your opinion, what's the reason why we depend on personal cars? Sebab we have other modes of transportation available, like we have public transportation kan, like why not people just depend on LRTs, on buses? But like why do you think as a society we depend on cars?
Because it's simple, macam when we see the current human punya how we live our life today is more towards we want convenience. Kita nak convenience. Macam actually we can talk about okay, we should walk, we should use public transport, but then kita kena consider public transport, all the infrastructure bukannya reach out to every parts yang kita nak pergi. Macam there's limitation to that. So benda tu akan create that sense of alah susah lah benda ni, macam benda ni akan create that kind of macam orang akan rasa susah untuk macam ada second thought nak guna benda tu. So in the end berbalik kepada soal dia adalah convenience. Maksudnya orang tetap akan guna kereta. Regardless maybe in the future kalau ada macam let's say invention of yang maybe personal punya ownership of the cars instead of tapi in a way yang macam mana yang maybe benda tu akan digunakan utilize tu tak tahulah in the future tu we don't know yet. But then of course kalau kita tengok on the current trend is people are evolving towards the EV. So EV tu is just the latest macam iteration of the cars in a way untuk kita benda tu jadi environmentally friendly lah. Tapi kereta dekat Malaysia lah especially sebab benda ni tak di properly recycle. Macam kita boleh tengok banyak je kalau dekat if I'm not mistaken dekat Selangor sendiri dia ada 66,000 cars yang left abandoned, yang basically orang tak guna, orang just left abandoned kat tepi-tepi jalan, dekat rumah-rumah, kawasan perumahan. Jadi benda tu tak di-solve. Benda tu bukan saja consume space. Instead of the 6,000 cars, of course, one cars, what is the dimension? Benda tu boleh digunakan for build another thing. So benda tu, that's why I think that I have to tackle in this issue in regards to the kita go towards setuju dengan the EV punya direction, and also at the same time we go for auto recycling. Menjawab kepada back to your answer is convenience.
Basically Zamir dia macam because it's become a lifestyle lah kan sebenarnya.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle.
Sebenarnya kalau simplify kan in a way lah kan. Just so orang dah terbiasa itu je lah. Okay.
But but if I may add on, I think it's also because of personal preference ataupun asset. You know, people like to own a car. Macam
Yeah.
regardless,
Betul.
aside from the convenience, they like to
Yeah.
own a car.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
maybe that's also one of
personalization
the
lah.
reasons.
I think
Yeah,
people nak
true.
personal ownership ni tu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, faham.
Okay. Alright. Okay, so next, okay, I think done my part. So Ash boleh explain yang paling gempak ni. Okay.
All right. Anyways, ignore that previous statement. So, Zami, do you mind if I share my screen as well? All right. Assalamualaikum semua. Let me just share my screen for a bit. Okay, so I guess going into the backstory of to how I started getting the initiation behind my design. This is why I have a personal story related to this in a bit, lah. Because actually the story behind the idea itself, not the design, yeah, just the idea actually came by to me through a dream. Yeah, believe it or not, lah. Because actually, in terms of the design thesis, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure actually for most 02 students pun, Master 02 students, I'm pretty sure you guys dah start fikir-fikir sikit about the design thesis in which you want to invoke yourselves into for one whole year, because that's your final design. So I started thinking about it masa time 02, and through that situation during that time, I had a dream in which I remember sampai today, in which I was introduced to a place where there was a lot of doors, a lot of hallways, and where walls reached to the top of the sky sampai ceiling pun tak nampak. So, tapi of course macam kalau korang tahu macam when we're in a dreamlike manner, we cannot see things solid, betul tak? So macam dia nampak benda macam wavy and stuff like that, right? So tapi during that dream, dia tak rasa takut tau. Tak rasa takut. Dia rasa macam tenang for some reason. Now the reason behind that I don't know lah, because ni masa time during that dream kan. Tapi the hallway semua had light coming from each of those doors. Semua there. So basically that's what sparked the idea in a way, because at the time I was already thinking about my subject. Sorry ya Muhammad Syazwan ni, nanti saya jawab nanti soalan itu. Saya pass link Shopee nanti, don't risau. So anyways, so this led to the design behind my poster. So the poster was actually me attempting to recreate the vision of that dream I had, literally. So that's what I tried to do. So basically this is where it came from. So as you can see from the dreamlike state. So it came to my senses where, because at the time, the design subject for my thesis was behind the issues of mental psyche. So mental health lah in a way, right? Tapi there are so many means of how you can kiranya tackle mental health. Kalau normally the conventional route of how one would see that is through that of medication. So maybe you design like a clinic in a way lah kan. Tapi of course architectural clinic lah kan, ada pokok banyak semua that kind of stuff lah. Tapi I didn't want to go that route because of the issues that I found in which were related to that subject. So that is something I'll explain a bit masa time explaining the issue lah. So what I wanted to recreate behind my design purely sampai sekarang, the end product, was trying to just get the ambience of that feeling I had during that dream. That feeling of peace, that feeling of, dia bukan macam redha, dia just tenang je lah. Basically, you're not afraid of what's coming because you don't feel like you're in danger. So that's kind of what I wanted to achieve. So basically, just let me read out a bit of my abstract. So this is basically briefly explains the design introduction. So as time moves ever faster within the era of technology, the treating of one's mental psyche begins to deteriorate as a non-priority and burden within all phases of life. With the purpose of providing a symbolic sanctity of purification and release for the elites of one's nation, Eden acts as a realm of spiritual healing through the aid of the human senses, symbolic architecture, and complex configurations. Upheld by the ideologies of phenomenology, the proposal aims to bring the elites burdened by the pressures of life back to their simple beginning. So there are a few questions that may arise through this abstract. Satu, what exactly is all this lah? Basically a symbolic sanctity lah, symbolic architecture lah, mental psyche, and then of course, kenapa elites? Kenapa orang elites? So that basically starts by me explaining the mindset in which is I want to standardize within my design, which is, so if I may show, follow the leader. So the page on the left, so I try full screen for you guys. Where is it? Oh, there you go, sorry. Okay, so the concept, follow the leader. Let me just put it back now so I can So the follow the leader is a mentality, is a concept amongst people. So follow the leader, we can see this concept amongst every form of industry, whether it be fashion, whether it be music, whether it be any forms of entertainment. The reason as to why is because contohnya, when you see someone of influence, seorang yang dah successful, right, at something they do, you as someone yang tak sampai lagi will try and imitate that person. So inshallah you may one day enjoy those success as well. You can see that macam basically the musicians of today's era lah, and Drake, Travis Scott, whoever it may be lah. So people start to follow their style, their fashion, all that kind of stuff. So the reason behind that concept, I wanted to utilize this concept, make it so that, for example, the whole purpose of the design is to, in a way, raise awareness towards mental health, but in a way that is not conventional, which I'll explain later lah. Tapi so using, in a way lah, that is negatively putting things, tapi using these elites, and then that outcome will affect the people of macam kita biasa-biasa untuk berfikir that this method may work because the elites are doing it. You know what I mean? So it's a theory. It's not solidified. It's just a theory. Tapi that's the whole purpose of design thesis. You're exploring things, right? And then inshallah kalau jadi. And so macam ni explaining why elites lah kan. And so we always seem to criticize the elites for the things that they do not do, yang benda buruk lah kan. But what if we are to strategize their potential qualities towards a bright opportunity? So basically the elemental reasons why elites are reasonable is a good choice for this. Number one, they're resource, they're rich, they have money, whether it be in terms of connections, whether it be in terms of wealth, land, whatever it may be. Their influence on people. Contohnya, when we hear someone that's successful talking, you listen because the person is of someone with experience or knowledge. So you listen. So their lifestyle, how they do things, you want to imitate that. So right, their leadership qualities, they are more upfront because they're more brave and so on and so forth. Their mindset is different because they chase a certain goal, right? And then their curiosity, because they have everything else in life, so they're curious to find out what's next. You know what I mean? When you look at business people nowadays, all of them are like that. So moving on towards that, basically introduces, these are basically elements of my introduction, and then which composes to the introduction of my design thesis lah. So the five senses ni sebenarnya is an introduction of the programs. Like I mentioned just now, my design, they're revolving around mental health. Tapi it's not through that of medical terms, right? Not in terms of medical intentions. They're more towards that of therapeutic intentions. And when I say therapeutic lah, it's not in terms of artificially, not in terms of medical, and it's more in terms of physical and natural therapy. So these forms of natural therapy can be broken down by the five senses, in which is the basic forms of human sense, right? So kita ada sight, hearing, taste, the rest of the five, right? So basically a question arises, can the integration of natural therapeutic means focus on the five senses, aid in the healing of one's mental state? So these are all questions that I keluarkan awal, insyaAllah bila ujung dah habis sampai produk sekarang, I boleh jawab macam tu lah kan. And then next comes my mythological influence, which is the Garden of Eden. So ini correlated to the feeling I had when I said in terms of the dream. The Garden of Eden is depicted as a place of sanctuary and place of peace, everything is perfect lah kononnya kan. So basically from this inspiration, the question from me arose that may the usage of natural elements and spiritual setting better aid in the healing of one's mental state. So basically this is when I start entering the studies of spiritual facilities. So such as, of course, masjid, churches, temples. Why do these places provide a sense of safety for people inside, for their soul? So that's what I'm trying to cure. For example, so macam I'm not trying to cure contohnya kalau kena accident, insyaAllah tak, right? Semua tu, tapi I'm not trying to cure that injury. I'm trying to cure that trauma. You know what I mean? Because in the end, this is what stays until the end of your life, right? So macam this is what affects you. So that's what I'm trying to cure. Of course, again, all hypothesis je lah kan, tapi then we try our best to try and achieve. And then pop culture reference is a cure for wellness. This is a movie. Pop culture for wellness, basically I won't tell too much of the storyline, nothing much actually, tapi it's just interesting where the movie is about a resort, a hidden resort yang basically tarik orang kaya-kaya ni, and then masuk resort orang, and then they feed them something to think that their resort is heaven, something like that. And as a result, they never want to leave. So these people remain missing and forever become customers. So macam, this is a pop culture reference really. So the issues in which, so this is a bit of my study slide in terms of the elements. I won't go too much into this because I don't think we have the time anyway. So spiritual healing, clubhouses. So this is basically the main typology of my design. Mental health, the senses based on therapy on the right diagram here. So I masuk study in terms of each of those therapeutic activities, hydrotherapy, bathhouse, so on and so forth. So masuk my issues. So this is basically issues regarding mental health. I won't explain too much, but I think you guys get the gist of it lah. So of course mental health is the issue kan. So the pressure and outcome for the elites and successful, showcasing that actually the elites sebenarnya face the most pressure when it comes down to mental health. Tapi because of the fact that they are not able to show that to the people tak tahu. For example, you can put yourself in that setting lah. Kalau kita orang biasa, kita pun dah rasa mental health, you bayangkan orang yang ada lagi banyak property than you, lagi banyak responsibility than you bayanglah apa they go through. Tapi statistics tu is showcased to here lah, as you can see from the percentages here. So these are examples of celebrities, of local celebrities that gone through that and their statements on the right here. The rising cases of mental health problems in Malaysia, of course, because that's the context of the design. The shame of admittance, because I'm pretty sure most of you, inshallah, you guys don't. Tapi if you do, try and seek help from friends lah kan. Tapi shame of admittance, malu nak ngaku you guys have the mental health. That's something actually that's a major issue in Malaysia. And then we have over-reliance of medicine, negative influence of technology and social media, and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much just the setting, kiranya introducing the purpose of this design is therapeutic architecture as a cultural change, not an immediate solution. Because nowadays people nak produk cepat. Tapi you kena faham when produk tu keluarkan cepat, mungkin quality dia kurang. You know what I mean? So macam the whole point of this is to introduce a lifestyle. So it becomes a habit beyond time. And then as a result, inshallah, one day we achieve that result that we want. You know. So I guess that's it for me when it comes down in terms of initiation of the project. Sorry if I spoke too much there. Go back to the other slide. Yeah. And I think kita dah start masuk chapter 2. But before I move on to chapter 2, ada siapa nak cakap apa-apa tak? Sembang-sembang lagi tu orang. So loli juga sembang seorang ni.
Kalau ada boleh just tanya je.
You guys can put the question in the question box ataupun you guys can raise your hand. Kalau you guys ada mic, dipersilakan lah. No problem.
Or if you guys have anything to share, your own spark dulu macam mana ke, you're welcome to share as well.
Yeah, that'd be better. Okay, so kalau tak ada, if there's nothing to be asked, I'll move on to the second chapter, which is the governing philosophy behind our design. So ni I'm pretty sure ramai, most probably lah degree students yang akan more curious about, because I think most master students are fully aware of philosophy within design and architecture. So philosophy ni, put it in simple terms, this is a statement in which I found lah, and that I think summarizes it. Okay, so it's basically a theory or attitude that acts as a guiding principle for behavior, knowledge, purpose, or an existence. So the term here is guiding principle. So for example, this is a very drastic example, tapi contohnya in our sake, Islam is pretty much our guiding principle. That is the philosophy behind us and as Muslims. So basically, I won't go too much into that, but takut disalah pula kan. So tapi that's an example I can give lah. So basically that is philosophy. It's very different from concept. It's not a theory. So I guess to explain further, Amal, you mind sharing them your governing philosophy behind the design, please?
Alright, sure. Mak kau. Okay. So for my project, philosophy. Okay. The philosophy chosen for my project. Well, actually, philosophy here, maybe some students have the philosophy first before they come up with the concept or the ideas of the project. But in my case, the philosophy and theories comes afterwards. They complement the overall approach of the design. So the philosophy I've chosen, it relates back to the project brief or the question 1, where did the journey begin? The philosophy I've chosen is Feng Shui by Joe Yap. Joe Yap is not the founder of Feng Shui, he's just a founder of the Mastery Academy of Chinese Metaphysics. So Feng Shui, regardless of its claim of being superstitious, It's actually the modern science are actually attracted to feng shui as it provides benefit to the building in response to the natural context of the built environment. And supporting that philosophy is the first theory, which is Genius Loci by Christian Norbert Schulz. So the design aims to have a sense of place as a core element of the design by understanding the human and natural context in hopes to resonance amongst the users as well. So the Genius Loci, it focuses more on how to evoke the sense of belonging amongst the users and the community in Sarawak. And the second theory is regenerative by Bill Reed. So it utilizes the existing surrounding context and actually contributing back to the environment, starting from the choices of the materials, construction method, and architectural elements. So just to remind you back, the main aim for my project is to heal the relationship between human, built environment, and also the natural context. So just to explain a bit, based on this philosophy and theories, and I'm pretty sure many students have different ways how they understand, how they interpret, how they implement the philosophy and theories into their design. But in my case, the philosophy is basically what governs the layout or the planning of the overall design in terms of the site geometry, the building geometry, how where should I position the entrance of the site, the overall geometry of the building, the components, the overall components. It is based on the understanding of feng shui. In terms of the genius loci theory, it is more on how to evoke that sense of place or reclamation of identity. So genius loci is divided into two, natural context and human context, where just to sum up a bit, in terms of natural context, in terms of the physical characteristic, ecological environment, it relates to the architectural language of the design, how the architectural language can make people to actually relate to the building, to have that sense of belonging to the space and place. And then the second theory is regenerative. This one is more on the method towards designing as the environment. For example, in terms of its construction, in terms of its design elements, in terms of its construction materials. So all of it will be merged into one comprehensive design scheme. So I think that's basically it on my philosophy interiors, because I know some students maybe later on you can listen to Ash. His approach is very philosophical. Mine is more on macam a direct route. You have this and then you interpret it into this and then this is how you apply it. So that's my kind of approach, because just to remind you back, the aim of this talk is to show that there's no right or wrong. There's multiple approaches in terms of your design thesis, also in terms of your how you choose your philosophy in theories. So that's how I choose mine. So now let's listen to Zame, how he chose his philosophy in theories for his project Wasteland.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So for me actually, mine, how I select my philosophy or theory. Basically I takkan cakap benda tu as a philosophy, more like of a theory. So the general paling common when we talk about recycling is of course circular economy lah, because that's the understanding for how kita consume and how kita produce things. So for me, on my part, is actually how this circular economy basically it governs both my programs and also in architectural wise. So for my program wise, so basically I interpret ataupun based on the understanding of circular economy, how basically the move ataupun the flow of the car itself, because benda ni akan influence on my spatial arrangement nanti, because what I'm trying to do in my thesis is the auto recycling part. So how the process is going to go is basically going through the circular economy punya understanding. So of course, starting from the macam mana how it's produced, macam mana dekat retails, then dia akan ada that a point of macam end, maksudnya end of life. So daripada end of life tu dia akan go through the process of salvation, maksudnya dia akan di-salvage, dia akan recycle, upcycle. Kemudian dia akan go through up to the process. So basically that's what my building akan try to do lah. Kemudian architecturally, the issue is how in architectural wise benda tu di-tackle. So I found that from a writer ataupun boleh kata teoris juga lah. So dia Stewart Brand. dalam buku dia ada cakap tajuk How Building Learn What Happens After They're Built in 1994. So basically it is dia ada satu iteration yang dipanggil as Industrial Democratic Design. So yang itu by a Copenhagen based punya architecture office, tapi but then it is the same as Stewart Brand ni. Basically the idea of Stewart Brand is simple. How dia perceive the architecture itself is by layers. Maksudnya from my understanding is by layers. Maksudnya kita segregate siap-siap. Maksudnya during the construction wise, during the design wise, we make it clear the layers of building yang ada to make it as a whole component, complete component. But then benda tu is intended for not necessarily benda tu akan jadi macam module whatsoever, tapi but then more of kita anggap benda tu as ada possibility for reuse, maybe recycle ataupun tanpa kita damage the layers itself, because kita dah segregate. Usually kalau kita tengok in buildings yang previously macam pribadi lama, kadang-kadang mostly made by maybe by very monolithic, pakai very macam okay, you kena tebuk this, macam benda tu, all those sort of things akan give impact towards the usage of the materials of the building itself. There is in the future, let's say kalau benda tu perlu. So that's how lah, macam that's basically yang di-explain oleh Stewart Brand lah. Kemudian then after contoh lagi, bila dia Stewart Brand bila dia dah explain on the layers tu, kita ada that sense of flow. Maksudnya apa yang akan control apa, maksudnya which layers yang akan control which layers. Contohnya macam structure, of course structure yang akan be the fundamental lah dengan site, macam tu lah, benda-benda macam tu lah. So kemudian another thing is yang I study is on the narrative part, because that's why my title of thesis is museum, ada that terms of museum, because how am I going to show the people the process, maksudnya the recycle punya part, maksudnya kita how am I going to integrate, maksudnya there must be a sort of understanding yang di-achieve bila dia keluar daripada building tu. Kalau tak, dia project itself akan fail lah. Maksudnya dia kena understand apakah building tu. So how I'm going to understand is through the theory of spatialized linearity. Basically senang je, macam kita nak buat meaningful configuration lah. So yang ni I can explain nanti on the design strategy later lah. But then of course I ada few case study yang I study based on how basically museum macam mana how dia incorporate the narrative tu in a spatial, dalam space. Maksudnya how it's filled by space lah. Kemudian I think that's it lah kot for my part.
Macam Zamir, dia macam quite interesting lah, because okay, ni something I want to highlight to everyone juga. When it comes to philosophy, dia ada misconception masa kalau if you baru nak indulge yourself within philosophy and architecture lah, it doesn't necessarily kena berkait dengan architecture, betul tak? Dia macam in terms of philosophy ni sebenarnya, because contohnya kalau Zamir punya philosophy yang dia gunakan atau theory lah kan, you can say circular economy, it's more on the basis of economy rather than that of architecture. Dia bukan terus berkait. So how you guys interpret that and then apply the strategies that were as stated within the philosophy itself into architectural strategies, jadilah dia philosophy of architecture nanti. So itu nanti for you guys yang confused, because we had that phase masa time kita orang 01, 02 and so on and so forth, where we were confused a bit. So this, I guess that's a misconception for you guys, I guess lah, to clarify. One more thing that's interesting contohnya macam Zamir in terms of economy. Kalau AMALEENA dia Feng Shui, which is a way of life. It doesn't have anything directly to do with architecture, is what I'm trying to say. So you guys, it can be a philosophy of any sort, tapi janji the strategies within that philosophy is how you manipulate them into architectural strategies yang penting. So jadilah macam tu. So I guess that's just one thing I wanted to add lah. Ada apa lagi?
So tak ada dah. So kita nak tengok yang
so my turn.
Those interested in philosophy, you should listen well to Ashhar Haidar here, because dia siapa Zamir? Dia siapa?
Let's shush. Okay, sorry. Minta maaf.
One-side 2.0. Okay, go.
Astaghfirullah. Jauh lagi perjalananku, ya Allah. Okay, Zamir, can you stop sharing your screen?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay guys, sorry you ignore apa-apa dia orang cakap. Dia orang ni suka cakap je. Okay, so I'll pretty much explain the steps I took lah. I won't go too much into the philosophy tau. Yang tu I think will take a bit too much time. So nanti kalau you guys interested in that, you guys can contact me after, then we can have a nice discussion about that kind of stuff lah. Tapi when it comes down to implementing the strategies of philosophy in architecture lah, what I like to do personally is have theoretical mapping. You know, theoretical mapping is when if you have too many thoughts or strategies in your head, if you take one by one, it will take too much time. So you have to kiranya map that out terus so that you sediakan your own blueprint in terms of how you actually initiate those strategies within your design. So this is initially what I did masa time 03 in terms of just, you know, having a guideline in a way lah kan, for the overall design in terms of whether it be elements, whatever lah, intentions and so on and so forth. So now I've gone through this, now masuk the philosophy which I govern within my design, which is phenomenology. So phenomenology ni, they actually, I'll put it straight into the perspectives of architecture. It's when you evoke a phenomenal experience within yourself. So when I say phenomenal experience ni, dia overwhelming, dia yang you tak terbiasa. Alright, to the point where it evokes your senses. So as I mentioned just now, the 5 senses, so dia berkait lah in a way that, so how I kaitkan is through that lah. So the difference between the philosophy which I govern and that between Amal and Zamir, kalau you guys perasan, my philosophy dia tak ada baik buruk tau. Dia tak ada contohnya you buat ikut philosophy ni you akan dapat outcome yang bagus. Tak ada, tak semestinya. You boleh dapat outcome yang tak elok, tapi janji dia naikkan experience yang phenomenal within yourself. So it can be fear, right? It can be peace, it can be anything. Tapi janji dia phenomenal experience. So this philosophy dia introduced by 2 main theorists lah, Martin Heidegger and Edmund Husserl. And then of course bila dah masuk realms of architecture, dah ramai lah start practice this form of philosophy within their design. So a particularly strong example is Peter Zumthor. So Peter Zumthor ni, one of his statements about it lah. Memories like these contain the deepest architectural experience that I know. They are the reservoirs of the architectural atmosphere and images that I explore in my work as an architect. So he is one of those examples. Kalau you guys jenis yang suka spaces yang monumental, all that kind of stuff, I would recommend you guys to tengok Peter Zumthor, Tadao Ando, Stephen Hall, Louis Kahn, macam itulah, along those lines. So these are basically the 4 idols that are prominent within the current generation of architects lah yang practice phenomenology. So phenomenology ni dia ada many ways of how strategies yang dia akan keluarkan, which I explain later lah, extracts dia. So this was a bit of my extraction of phenomenology in terms of the elements involved, in terms of the strategies used by idols of phenomenology, the intent, the initiation, the purpose, kenapa initially dia dipakai, all kinds of things lah. Because the fun thing about this kind of philosophy is that it's open-minded. Dia tak ada betul salah. It just depends on the intention of the user, which is very dangerous kalau tak pakai betul-betul. Tapi it's my passion kan, so I just explore je lah. So ni now masuk theories. Okay, how I differentiate between philosophy and theories. So philosophy is the, as I mentioned just now, guiding principle. Theories are more of the stepping stones that help you achieve the philosophy. Kalau korang faham. Alright, so for example, theories that I involve myself in is geometrical composition, narrative, and hybridity. So basically geometrical composition and narrative ni are studies made by Sophia Sarah and Elise Tissink. Kalau you guys also mean that, you guys can search them online. Very nice read. So narrative of course goes hand in hand dengan phenomenology. So this is the main governing theory for my philosophy, narrative. Because narrative, as you know, ada plot line, right? Dia ada starting point, rising action, climax, falling action, and so on and so forth. So all in the end to get the end of the story. So I use narrative as a means of achieving phenomenology, if that makes sense lah, you guys. So ni adalah breakdown strategies dia kan, but I won't get too much into that. So hybridity pula. Hybridity is more in terms of creating something new from something that is normal. So this is a theory dikeluarkan oleh Firda Kelatan. Firda Kelatan, if I'm not mistaken, dia sekarang mengajar di Pratt, and if I'm not mistaken. Dia pun best kalau you guys boleh tengok kerja dia, kalau you guys minat kerja macam ni, you guys boleh tengok. So basically dia pakai elements yang simple, you know, like overlapping, boolean, all that kind of stuff, very simple. Tapi the whole purpose is to create something new from something that was dulu biasa. So, stuff like that lah. So creating something new. So all these three theories with the governing philosophy in the end is to result in something called emotional architecture. So emotional architecture ni pula, one of the founding, I guess, architects behind it is Tadao Ando. Dia master lah benda ni, emotional architecture ni. In terms of evoking a spirit of place ke, dia punya utilization of water and materials and light and shadow especially. All of that is calculated. Dia bukan saja macam letaklah tingkap kat sini. Tak ada. Dia semua all that is calculated to evoke an experience in you. So these are one of those idols that I look up to lah when it comes down to this kind of work. So this was my brief extraction from those studies lah. So in terms of phenomenology itself, there are 5 main strategies such as light, shadow, transition, circulation, materials and detailing, incorporation of water and natural elements, and of course geometrical composition and volumetrics. And then break down towards that of theoretical extraction of narratives in terms of doing strategies of spatial sequence, hierarchy through levels, flow through transitions. So semua ni you guys can okay, this is one thing I want to make clear. Benda-benda macam ni, dia bukan you guys buat kepala tahu tau. You guys, these strategies sebenarnya semua dah ada. Whatever you guys are thinking, I promise you ada orang dah pernah fikir. So you guys search up PDFs, architectural strategies semua ni kan. Ada orang dah pernah buat and ada terms yang you guys sebelum ni tak tahu, tiba-tiba tahu. And actually is what you intend. So that's what you have to do if you want to go to that next stage sikit lah kan. So that's when you understand all these strategies, right? And then you boleh baca, you actually understand strategies ni sebenarnya dipakai untuk apa. Pintu ni besar kenapa? Pintu ni kecil kenapa? Yang ni kenapa? All that kind of stuff lah kan. So theoretical extraction yang kedua, geometrical composition. So of course in terms of symbolic representation, size and vastness of scale, curious inspired composition. So ni pun berbeza kan, because forms of volumetrics differentiate between building forms and you have monuments, you have follies, you have all kinds of things lah. And benda tu pula ada symbolic representation. So when it comes down to phenomenology, invoking something, a phenomenal experience, what I wanted to achieve was that symbolism. So kiranya macam everything is for a purpose of evoking that experience, and when you have a deeper connection to an experience, that experience tends to enhance yourself, you know what I mean? And then yang ketiga is hybridity lah. So this is intersection, emphasis, core uniqueness, identity or flexibility, and so on and so forth lah. Okay, so ni dah nak start masuk plan study. So I think that's it for the governing of our philosophy. So I think we're done with chapter 2. So now we are going into the third chapter, which is the fine line between fantasy and
We have
reality.
about 1 hour left.
Oh my god. Okay, jom laju. So we have fine line between reality and fantasy lah. Okay, so basically the introduction to this chapter is basically, of course, kalau you guys perasan, throughout the first 2 chapters is more in terms of, your thoughts, imagination and creativity. In terms of keluarkan idea yang baru and so on and so forth. So now is how you do morph that and form it into a realistic design, right? Because you need that in some way, shape, way or form in architecture lah. So okay, without further ado, Amal, sorry. Please start off our discussion on this topic.
Sekejap, before that my line okay tak Ash? I rasa macam
Okay,
okay.
je.
stuck
Okay
tak?
je.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay, okay, alright. Okay, so for question 3, fine line between fantasy and reality. This one we're focusing more on the site context, because we have to understand that site is very important in terms of it, micro or macro studies, or even the site selection itself is very important, because that is what makes the building unique. The building is unique at that specific site, that specific point on the map. So so for my site analysis, 13, alright, as I mentioned, my project is located at Santubong, Kuching, a nature-based attraction hotspots. It is located along the Jalan Sultan Tengah here, and nearby there's nature attractions such as the Mount Santubong, the natural Santubong National Park, Damai Beach Resort, Sarawak Cultural Village, Permai Rainforest Resort. So all this nearby it, macam the whole area itself it provides this specific natural ambience that I seek for the project, where the youth can actually from this point they can actually go to these nature attraction hotspots in Santubong as well. So in terms of its site analysis, as usual macam masa degree pun sama je, kita buat micro and macro analysis, we do the SWOT analysis to understand the site better. But for my building, since it's more on how the building responds to the environment, how it utilizes the natural elements existing. So the site is 4 acres, and as you can see here, according to the sun path, the building is elongated, meaning that I have to make sure that there's more openings on the north and south area so that there's lesser heat gain from the east and west. And then the wind direction from south to north, which means I have to provide a large opening on the south to north area so that I can utilize natural ventilation for the building. The vista frontage, considering that there's the main road on the north area and then the Santubong River on the south area. That's where the double frontage happens, because from here the people by car will see the building, and from the Santubong River the people from the Santubong river cruise will see the building. In terms of its contour and soil, that also dictates the design itself. And I will explain later on in terms of that. And as usual, the natural features surrounding buildings and also the landmarks. So that's basically what we have to understand in terms of its site context, because the building has to be designed, especially since one of my theories is genius loci, having that sense of place, having that unique characteristic of a building for that specific place. So that's in terms of the site. Next is in terms of its precedent study. So like we all know the importance of precedent studies just to show that our building is doable. Architectural language, as I mentioned before, for my theory genius loci, architectural language is the Baro architecture. I've highlighted here some of the buildings in Kuching. As you can see, I hope it's clear enough, the DBKU, Sarawak Cultural Village, Damai Beach Resort, the Dewan Undangan Negeri, Kuching Civic Centre, the White Baro, all these, as you can see, they have similar architectural approach, which is actually the Baro architecture from the Bidayuh indigenous people in Sarawak. So this is one of the ways how I create the building to have so that the people have a personal relation with the building itself, so that they know that this is a building in Kuching, Sarawak. So in terms of international precedent studies, the first one is Environmental Interpretation Center. So this building, it blends with the surrounding by using natural tones and has a translucency to engage the user to the natural context. Again, I remind you that main purpose of this project is healing the relationship between human, built environment, and also the natural context. The second precedent studies is more on the programs provided for a building that wants to integrate agricultural activities. The third one is interpretation and visitor center of technology development plan. So this building aims to publicize the project of geological storage of carbon dioxide. So this building acts as a medium educator. So the same approach that I wish my building to be, as a medium, as a educator medium for users visiting the center. And then the last one here is Van Dusen Botanical Garden Visitor Center. So this building is actually one of the building listed under the regenerative approach by a researcher immersed in 2015. So this building blends with the surrounding physically, and it contributes back to the environment through its energy production and also through its consideration and replacing back the lost greeneries on the site onto the green roof. So that's basically how I inject reality, how I consider the site context itself, the existing precedent buildings. So this will be merged. That is how I inject reality into this project. So Zamir, how did you inject your reality in your project?
Sekejap. Okay. Okay, basically for me, the site consideration the proposed site yang I selected is Glamoury. So this is after the vetting proposal. So few lecturers also suggested the same site So basically the idea of Glamoury itself, because the whole area tu mostly consists of the industrial punya parts of the industrial punya activities. So although dia still ada consider ada area for like the golf punya area, golf punya tempat, then also residential. Tapi kalau tengok based on this particular diagram, my site is located along dia punya jalan Perserian Kejaya, and basically dekat T junction yang dekat dengan Mercedes punya dealership kat T junction tu. So kalau ada any of the orang yang familiar, maybe that's the site lah yang ada hutan-hutan tu. So dia macam the location of the site itself is for me kind of maybe boleh kata strategic, because dia ada consideration, I have the advantage of macam mana in terms of later on how I'm going to approach my planning, because there's a clear segregation between the greens and also the buildings punya development punya area. So dia macam very maybe because of my considering my programs itself ada that macam recycle whatsoever, dan kita cakap recycle bukan recycle plastik, recycle kereta, dan benda tu of course dia akan maybe in some ways, tapi but then that's the contradiction. Bila kita cakap pasal recycle kereta, maybe that's will create noise whatsoever, tapi dia ada that kita nak kena consider juga how people can experience it at the same time. So those consideration yang led me to particularly choose this site lah, yang di mana macam I state tu. Satu lagi, because of I think the interesting part of the site adalah because of the future development. Maksudnya dekat along the jalan, kalau yang perasan dekat jalan yang panjang ni, that main road Perserian Kejaya adalah akan ada that LRT punya development dekat those area. Dan the LRT tu somehow I use it as an opportunity, ataupun boleh katakan macam site tu punya yang I akan guna, so that benda tu akan jadi one method of how people could access this site lah, kan? Sebab benda tu walaupun jadi kita benda tu biasa je, tapi but then that's the idea of, sebab tempat tu, that area bukannya tempat commercial, tapi lebih kepada tempat industrial kan. Jadi macam mana kita nak consider museum dekat area macam tu. So yang based on that consideration lah. Kemudian I also ada buat study lah, macam possible ke untuk building yang bila kata industrial ataupun yang ada that kind of programs yang heavy machinery whatsoever, involve all those sort of things, untuk di approach oleh people, untuk people experience it. So I study on I found a case study. Maksudnya this case study basically the Shogang Industrial Regeneration Project. Basically just this case study not necessarily I follow in terms of architecture wise, tapi lebih kepada on how the building is used. Maksudnya this case study shows that it's possible for a building yang industrial punya ni. This is basically a building yang used to be a steel punya manufacturing punya company, dan dia ditukar kepada a museum, in a way for people to experience the whole process itself from one point to another. So basically that's the same. Cuma basically this is the adaptive punya project. So but then it proved that in dekat Glamoury tu possible lah for me. So that's I think yang I nak explain sebab we running out of time. Okay, next to Ash.
Alright. Thank you, man.
Alright.
Lawa ada diagram kau. Diagram lawa Zamir ni. You guys kalau nak belajar diagram, you guys tengok follow Zamir. Seriously, it's my genuine comment. You guys tengok dia. He's really good at making clear diagrams. Okay. Seriously. Okay, so now for me, injecting reality in my perspective. So there are a lot of things to consider when injecting reality in my project, because one, it's obvious that the design direction in which I want to take is not conventional. Not necessarily conventional lah, kan? Because of its very flamboyant means of design. Tapi because of that, there were several things I had to take into consideration, such as that such as that of the site itself, right? The studies of the present studies in terms of programs. How am I supposed to incorporate those programs together? The structural study in terms of that, and also in terms of the imageability. Safwan pun ada lah. Okay, so now
masuk in terms of site. So Kota Tinggi. So my site itself is Desaru Beach, Johor. So there are several reasons as to why I depicted this as a site choice for my design. Initially, there were three choices. Because the whole reason was I wanted the image of a resort, but a very exclusive and monumental resort, being private. So such as maybe to the point where it becomes like a spiritual building yang you takut nak masuk tapi boleh je masuk sebenarnya. So because of that, I wanted there to be some form of audience, whether it be an audience in terms of people participation, their activity around the site, ataupun in terms of the site itself being very exclusive. So there were three choices in which were number one, Jeddah Baik, just because of its very reserved space, very secluded, and dunia bukit-bukit and all. Desaru and Port Dickson. Now the Port Dickson was honestly just a letak je lah. My two choices was honestly Desaru and Jeddah Baik, to be honest with you guys lah kan. So last, after discussion with my lecturers and supervisors and so on and so forth, last I went with Desaru. The reason as to why, because it has more features in terms of there being a beach, there are resorts nearby, there's facilities nearby, and there's people activity as well. And at the same point, it's in Johor, located nearby Singapore. So of course, kan kalau kita pergi Johor pun banyak tempat-tempat mahal-mahal kan. The reason as to why is because it's very accessible to that of Singapore for people in Singapore and Atang, and so on and so forth lah. So I will go too much into that, but the main reason as well is to its future planning of being a retreat paradise. So Desaru in its future planning, and this was a comment stated, it was actually a statement made by our previous Prime Minister lah, Median. So basically, So the Prime Minister said he was actually very happy with the development of Desaru at its current progress, but because of the future planning of it being a retreat paradise with all the facilities that are to be developed there, there's no doubt that Desaru will be up to the levels of an exclusive retreat paradise as well. So there are several facilities, of course, studied there. So these are that. So they, of course, you generate. So I guess just to give clear indication of where it is. As you can see from the plot of land, the yellow here. So that is the plot of land of my site. That's my site. So you can see that like directly across the beach. There's only one singular. It's a singular lane lah. It's a two-way singular lane road, showcasing that there's only one form of access to the site. So it's very limited. But considering the design approach being that of exclusiveness, it didn't pose too much of a threat to my design development. It did provide a form of weakness in terms of whether there be trafficking, in terms of vehicular. But however, because of the fact that the site itself, as you can see, is very bare, right? Very nature reserved based. There's not much human population there, so there's not much issues in terms of that. So of course, just some information in terms of the zoning, the vistas, and so on and so forth, building regulations, the projections of the site in the sections. So this, of course, masuk tadi in terms of what Amal and Zamir, I guess, were presenting about just now in terms of the site analysis. However, how I did my site analysis was every element was in particular to that of a design development. Meaning, what I mean by that is every element is used in my design development stage. So I won't go too much into this lah, tapi I guess it can be seen as general, tapi depending, I guess, on how you look at it lah kan. So much of the first one being, of course, in terms of landmarks, nodes, right, urban economy and development pattern. We have natural orientation, natural features, right, site accessibility and circulation, green features and water body, which is actually very important to my design. Surrounding activity density, right, and then also in terms of external and internal vistas. So the point of focus, that's actually very important as well. So that pretty much briefly sums up the site analysis. So now just to go into, if I wasn't mistaken, I missed something in terms of programs. So in terms of programs, what I had to do, because there was a plethora of programs in which I wanted to introduce, so I had to list them down, right? So once you list them down, you come up with an SOA. However, an SOA is not enough to visualize the volumetrics of the activities themselves. So what I did was, after I had my initial SOA, what I did was I made a volumetric configuration of each of those spaces, right, in terms of the dimensions that they projected, and then started organizing them on site. So these are pretty much according to each of those key activities. So these volumetrics are based on macam-macam lah. Of course, whether it be in terms of case study or whether it be in terms of method and so on and so forth lah kan. And so once I did that, Okay, ni dah masuk. Okay, this is masuk more towards design development, so I won't go too much into that. So another form of injection in terms of ni is actually, oh, I skipped to this all the way already. Oh my god. Anyways, so understanding your structure. This is something I advise most students, if not every student, to understand awal, especially considering kalau design you jenis yang complex. What I mean by complex is in terms of two ways, whether it be complex in terms of segregation, meaning it's not one singular building, and two, whether it is actually complex building, maksudnya dia ada, you know, forms, different forms and so on and so forth. So in terms of me, what I did my base study on was based on the Pantheon and the Parthenon. So because in terms of during those times of designs, they were much inspired by, you know, Leonardo da Vinci's forms of architecture and so on and so forth, which they design based on perspective. Yeah, so they design based on what people see, not based on measurement. So that's the difference between orang zaman sekarang syariah dan design dengan orang zaman dulu. So basically, what I did was I referred to that lah, and in terms of understanding the form of structure, whether it be surface and rigid, linear and rigid. So these are terms that you will study and learn later on, right? So that's just a bit of that. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of injecting reality. Sorry. Anyways, so now we move on to the fourth chapter. So before moving on there, anyone want to say anything else? May, Amal, anyone from the floor as well? Siapa-siapa yang nak cakap apa-apa ke? Tak ada
I understand possibly mungkin susah sikit nak hadam kan, macam kena hadam
yalah.
3 different design pieces kan.
Sorry
So like
I make it
just macam untuk show the difference, the
yeah,
differences
just,
lah.
so if you have like further questions, like more detailed questions, like we can, you know, personally after this.
Just to make things clear, the purpose of today's discussion, dia bukan sebenarnya kita nak fully explain kita orang punya design thesis tau. Of course we do, just to showcase so that you guys can visually understand what we're doing. Tapi it's more to showcase the different approaches that you guys can take. And when later you guys, so you guys tak ada, you know, confuskan diri sendiri, tak ada question, am I doing things right or wrong? Honestly, there's no right and wrong, right? So as long as you follow a certain guideline, you'll be fine, right? So now I guess, oh, sorry. Yes, hello.
Actually, I have a question again.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. Please.
Actually, I didn't introduce myself already. You guys know I'm Amira, but like, I'm Amira. I'm from BSc 04, and next semester I'll be in BSc 05.
Right.
And I have this question is more for Asha, because since you're like really into like philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like realistically thinking lah, not to like bring you down or like ask you with malicious intent, tapi macam you pernah terfikir tak bila you buat design with like that's like very heavy on philosophy, like have you ever had thoughts like will my design ever sell? Because macam it's easy for us like shot sendiri.
Yeah,
tapi
betul.
macam sometimes other people tak setuju dengan pandangan kita. It's hard for them to like go on board with us. So macam how do you like with the
I've gone through that almost every semester.
I'm sure Ash likes that question.
Yeah, Chania. This is something I have a personal story with lah. Tapi I don't want to talk too much about it. Nanti takut it sounds negative, right? Tapi the whole point of doing design for me is pursuing a passion, right? Yeah, because at the end of the day, I don't want to do architecture because I have to. I want to do architecture because I want to, right? So if I suka philosophy, nak buat macam mana? You know what I mean? There are so many examples of well-known architects, not even architect students pun, you know, there's so many examples of students yang dah successfully done so. Now there are obstacles along the way, right? Yang halang you in terms of feeling, oh, macam I'm trying something new and so on and so forth. Tapi for some reason they keep on bringing me down because they don't believe in me. But at the end of the day, you look at what you want to achieve. You know what I mean? Macam last kan, honestly kan, I'll be honest with you, bila sampai masters ni kan, when I was in degree, I did my work to satisfy others. I did my work so that people could see macam, wah, okay, dia ni rajin kot je, bagus. Tapi bila masuk master, I don't care about that anymore, because dia macam it's more of me trying to satisfy what I want to know, what I want to learn and what I want to be, because dah selepas ni dah tak belajar dah, betul tak? So macam baik I belajar habis, you know. So macam I've been lucky to have great supervisors, Mayang, and as well as Cik Fairos, if you know.
as well as a personal tutor of me as well that I talk to from time to time on site. These people have been very supportive of me in terms of trying to push me to go towards this direction rather than, you know, swaying under pressure because of everyone else. But then this is just heart to heart lah. In the end, do what you want to do, honestly, because at the end of the day, grades only define you academically, right? Not to say that you don't care about grades, care lah about grades juga. Tapi at the end of the day, buat apa yang you satisfied with. Because last nanti 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you're going to look back at your work, right? You're going to look back apa aku buat ni. And at that time, kalau you satisfied, bagus lah. Because that's the end goal. You're not really going to care 20 years from now about your grades. You know what I mean? As long as you do what you love and you do that well. What I mean by well is you put in effort lah. Janganlah main bantai buat je then, you know. Well, because in this ni, when it comes down to stuff like ni lah kan, philosophy and all stuff, and the only thing you need is facts. Now, so you only need a statement from someone saying that this can be done, or you need examples. So then the people that start judging you start supporting you and saying, oh, okay, it can be done. Okay lah, boleh lah, buat lah, sambung. You know what I mean? So macam, betul lah you cakap, lalas kita jangan shot sendiri jangan. Shot sendiri jangan. Jangan main bantai sebab ingat lawa, aku nak buat sebab lawa. Jangan. Don't do that. Do that because you actually want to know what it's about, you know? You want to learn what it's all about, what it's for. Once you showcase that to the people that are judging you, people will stop judging you because, okay, they see. The reason why people are judging you is because you're not clear. You know what I mean? Tu je sebenarnya. Yeah, now that I've gone through it all lah. Dia macam, I mean, sampai tak master lah kan. So, if you're not clear, people will judge you. Tapi if you're clear with everything, macam, you know, like diagram ZAMIR semua clear semua, cun lah, orang okay lah, tak ada masalah. You know? So, don't worry too much about that lah. I'm pretty sure ramai sebenarnya going through that phase, that what your design, what you want to do is orang tak suka atau orang judging you rasa that. Find a way to make it work. Because once you do, you'll be proud, you know? And don't worry, grades too, times will heal. I mean, if you're not happy with the grades lah. Tapi of course, we do our best lah kan for mak bapak and all semua. So at the same time, try to do your grades lah. That's what's unfair about architecture tau. Apa-apa pun you kena perfect kak. You nak buat apa yang you nak, you at the same time kena pandai kak. So tapi nak buat macam mana? I mean, that's what the industry asks from us kan. So that's what we have to do. Sorry Amir, aku bil banyak sangat pula. Sorry tu. Lama aku boleh sembang pasal benda ni sebenarnya. Tapi tak apalah kan. So, all right. Anyways, now moving to our next lah, synchronizing the three elements. So basically what this topic is all about is trying to basically all the things that we talked about just now. Summarizing in short is design development, putting all these elements together and how we came up with the initiation of our final product. So without further ado, Amal, please take my place.
All right. So for synchronizing the three elements, because sometimes students can get carried away. Sometimes along the way tengah-tengah buat tu lupa apa nak buat, sebenarnya apa aim kita sebenarnya, what was the purpose again, macam short buat design semua, we tend to forget about that. So synchronizing the three elements ni is kita macam go back to the roots. Ash, can I share my screen? Okay. Alright. So for synchronizing the three, this is how I do it. Maybe other students do it a different way. So for me, it's important to have a framework, just so that I can make sure that everything is it has the right flow lah. Because it starts off from the issue of climate change or deforestation, broken down into three, which is the food security, low environmental awareness, and disengagement with nature. So the solution to the issue of agriculture is by integrating indoor vertical farming with the twist of technology and getting the youth involved. So this is more on how what is the solution to the first issue. The second one, in terms of the low environmental awareness, the solution is the hypothetical programs that I mentioned before. I think it was in the first chapter, I think, how did the journey begin? So the T1 educate, T2 interpret, and T3 execute is the narrative journey, in a way experiential learning for the users in hopes to access a solution to the low environmental awareness issue. And the third one is the disengagement with nature, how to combat this issue is through the philosophy and design theories that I've mentioned before, such as the feng shui, genius loci, and regenerative approach. So basically, this portion of the study is actually what I have done for Master 03. So that's the first phase. The second phase is how to realize that this is more the technical aspects. So the question is, how can architecture help in mitigating climate change? The climate is changing, so must architecture. So as I mentioned, regenerative approach and now the introduction of responsive architecture. So responsive, there's passive and active. Passive is macam how we design the building. Active is the type of technologies that we incorporate to make it as a responsive architecture. So this is the outcome that I aim to achieve, which is by focusing on the facade design or the technology, the site consideration, the natural materials or biospheres such as the bamboo or the timber materials, and then to ensure the design outcome to get a human comfort and also energy efficiency. So that's basically the framework. So the next one is in terms of understanding the difference between when people clear the site for agriculture or people clear the site for a building, such as this type of building. So okay, as you can see here, a sustainably managed forest. As trees age, they absorb less carbon dioxide and produce less oxygen. So trees are harvested once matured, and then new ones are planted more than the number harvested. So the trees are carefully selected and processed at the nearby factory. This is one of the example of in the Timber Malaysia, Malaysian Timber Council. 1 meter cube of this timber actually lock 500 kilograms of carbon. So can you imagine having a whole building from a timber from a sustainably managed forest, how it can help in terms of locking the amount of carbon dioxide. So this is just a diagram showing the difference. So as you can see, this is a forest, and then when tree clearing occurred, if it's for agriculture purposes, it will be occupied with agriculture, and then it clears the trees, it increases carbon greenhouse gases, and it causes soil erosion because due to the usage of pesticides, fertilizers, and so on. So that's what happens when the forest is cleared for agriculture. But when it is cleared for a building, and then we utilize the materials such as the glulam or laminated timber, it actually helped the site in terms of that we allow the site that has been cleared just now to replant more trees, and then for carbon sequestration, and also can integrate agriculture. And actually for this method, you can actually have the ability to lock 400% more carbon than concrete buildings. That's the difference when we have a building that's from concrete, or what we call it technosphere materials, or biosphere materials such as the timber. So and then from there is the regenerative approach, how I implement what I have talked before into the design. So usually design have 70% of built up area and 30% of greeneries, but for my project, I focus more on the consideration of the existing trees. So actually the existing trees, it dictates the layout of the building. So I try to minimize as much as I can chopping down of trees. And then the second one is cut and fill to level to the ground. Usually buildings they macam level the ground so that they can construct the building easily. But for my approach, I try my best to retain the original topography by elevating the building on stilts. Right, so you can see here the building is sloping down from the west to the east side. And then technosphere materials such as concrete and steel, but by using biosphere materials such as wood or bamboo, which is very environmental friendly, and as I mentioned before, can lock a large percentage of carbon dioxide. And even during the production of the materials itself, wood and bamboo has actually lesser energy produced or energy used to produce it in comparison to concrete and also steel. And then the building and nature usually acts as a separate entity. So I like when the building has an integration of greeneries, such as on the rooftop or on facade. It not only provide something that's very aesthetic, it also provides a sustainable approach in terms of ensure there's no stormwater runoff, and also for the temperature inside the building. This is just a summary of the elements open spaces and green features of the building. As I mentioned before, the borough architecture, having a daylight atrium in the center of the building to utilize more daylight into the building, responsive facade. This one is later on I will explain more because this is one of my special study. And then having grass block pavers just to reduce stormwater runoff, preventing erosion on the site, having the building on stilts to allow extra underspace and less disruption to the natural condition. And then and it relates back to the indigenous architectural language, like if you remember indigenous houses, how they are standing on stilts. And then outdoor agricultural space on this area, and then the green roof. So actually the whole layout of the building, the purpose is that to allow more pedestrian movement on site, and then the vehicular circulation is controlled only on the lower side of the site or the east side of the site. So that's basically it, just to talk about how I synchronize from the idea that sparked the whole design thesis, the philosophy, injecting reality, and now this is where we synchronize all the three elements back. So I guess that's it from me for question 4. So Zamir, how did you synchronize your the 3 chapters we discussed before?
Okay. But then before that ada soalan from Nafisah Izam. So should we answer this first or should I proceed with my part?
You can answer if you want. Answer lah. Straight answer, better.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think aku rasa macam benda ni it's not that macam maybe to the three of us boleh.
General is it a general question?
General lah. So the first one, how much does the work experience 6 to 12 months prior to taking master actually benefit from the process? No, ada problem.
To be honest, I think among us 3, I have the less working experience. I think kan, betul kan? Ash, you have work berapa lama dulu?
Tak ada lama ni, 8 bulan.
8 bulan. Ni Zamir?
9 bulan.
9 bulan, okay, betul. I have the lesser work experience because I work only for 5 months, 5 to 6 months macam tu je lah. So actually masa bekerja dulu, I was worried if I am ready for masters because I feel like tak cukup lagi ilmu dikumpul. But actually for me personally, working tu dia more on how I develop my own communication skills or macam confidence in terms of that, not really on the thinking process. That's very different. So that's what I personally experienced. So I don't know if Ash and Zamir, what do you guys experience?
Itu juga sebab benda tu dia maybe depends on the involvement of the particular person lah dekat dalam company tu kan. Maksudnya maybe kalau di-involve banyak in terms of dia punya thinking part, maybe ada opportunity untuk dia buat benda-benda macam tu, maybe akan ada benefit. Tapi but then bukan semua company give opportunity macam tu kan. Macam ada yang just basically buat drawing dan basically involve on project kan, benda-benda
macam ada certain orang kan dia banyak opportunity to engage with authority semua. So benda tu it will help dalam master for certain subjects macam architectural practice, construction management. So it depends on stage berapa dah you guys achieve masa working. Macam for me mostly on macam schematic design phase. So sampai takat tu je lah the experience that I can bring to masters.
Just to add on sekejap je, working experience for me lah kan, dia add more towards your logic and reasonability when you design. Macam the longer you work, the more you are prone to thinking of things that can be done, that would help you, that would ease you, stuff like that. I won't say the longer you work, it's more leaning towards that. But not to say this design you akan kurang, no, definitely not. It actually helps you. So tapi depends on who you're asking. Sebab ada orang akan tanya, ada orang akan cakap wah sabun masa terus lah, and because nanti you dah hilang passion untuk design pula. Tak juga. Ada yang lama kerja masuk power juga kan, sama je. So macam honestly, if this question is relating to you macam nak sabun masters when you think you're ready. There's no such thing as macam I don't have enough knowledge to masuk master. No such thing lah. Ada yang masuk terus. Don't worry about it. You don't have to question yourself about that lah.
But it does help you. Having experience does help you. That's without doubt. We have to move. We got 30 minutes left. Holy
Oh,
crap.
okay. Yeah. For the another two question tu kita akan sambung balik.
Sama. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
okay, for I just briefly go lah. So, moving on from tadi, from the I already mentioned on the
Injecting reality.
injecting reality, and also I'm on materialitical punya part tu. So, I come up with the strategy of reversible regime lah. So, this reversible regime ni not that I truly managed to emphasize sangat pun dalam design. I ada emphasis, tapi but then in terms of puas hati tu, I think maybe I could do more. But then of course that's another side. But then of course this reversible regime ni is basically the technical condition of basically possible for dia actually complement the theory of industrial democratic design tu. Maksudnya when we talk about the layers of building yang kita dah segregate clearly when we design things, so the idea for this regime is possible because of that lah. Of course, that's yang akan di-explain nanti in AT design. Kemudian when I talk about the theory number 2, basically narrative punya theory, I come up with the idea of basically maybe simple je benda ni, life museum. So benda ni basically is in a way untuk kita and strategi untuk kita showcase all those proses lah. Maksudnya instead of kalau kita tengok the typical museum, of course kita look at the things very stagnant, so whatsoever kan. So tapi but then this kind of life museum basically is not bukannya typical yang akan orang pergi lah, tapi it's going to be a very informative lah in a way kalau it's carried out properly. So museum is not a museum. Kemudian I move on to I furthermore extract the spatializing narrative punya part, because what can be done, because before I move on to the planning punya part, maksudnya during my design stage, I want to establish all these sort of things, because so that later I could kalau tak incorporate semua pun boleh incorporate most of the parts. Maksudnya benda tu akan nampak dalam design. Kalau lah kan, kalau based on kita punya justification juga. So this configuration ni adalah basically considering the narrative ataupun cara untuk kita sampaikan the design itself, the understanding for the flow of the story. Contohnya macam first we create the anticipation by creating curiosity. So we create the dynamic punya flow, dan dia ada translative punya spatial elements, dan especially yang paling I banyakkan implement adalah in the extroversion punya part, which is the how we segregate clearly between the circulation and also the space for the, let's say, production space untuk recycle dan upcycle. Jadi benda tu somehow correlate balik dengan macam I cakap tadi, layers. And so layers tu not necessary on the building punya parts. In terms of planning pun, I make it like a layers. Maksudnya this segregated benda tu macam tu. So kemudian moving on to the the next stage is on how I establish my modus of operandi lah. Maksudnya after I dah dapat all those theory of the site consideration whatsoever, what modus operandi tu, how I elaborate it. So based on a few study by BMW Group Recycling and Dismantling Center whatsoever, I come up with the framework, basically framework yang establish the apakah each component yang ataupun modus operandi tu. Contohnya macam dalam building I ni ada recycle, upcycle and also museum ataupun exhibition. But then how I somehow establish this framework, because it is important untuk to know in terms of nanti bila nak buat plan tu, kita akan tahu macam which akan flow dulu dan mana. Maksudnya benda ni relates to the workability ataupun efficiency of the idea of kita nak buat intention kita tu lah awal kan, kita nak buat auto recycling. So macam mana? So this is the process lah, process. So sama juga all those proses yang lain, upcycle, the same framework. So yang benda ni akan ditranslate to the later stage, maksudnya benda ni akan diimplement dalam plan macam tu. Kemudian and also all those museum punya flow macam mana. Kemudian I'm trying to create the overall punya programs punya flow. Maksudnya contohnya from the idea of macam mana kereta tu masuk, dia go to where and where. Contohnya macam in my buildings, basically of course there's, untuk kita recycle kereta, dia akan perlu this process. Maksudnya this is what yang I establish lah. Maksudnya macam kalau untuk kereta tu di recycle di tempat ini, dia perlu go through this evaluation, dan after that evaluation dia boleh determine maksudnya kita nak go to recycle or upcycle. So that's why kalau nanti in planning later on stage, dia akan nampak why I plan then why I did that kind of planning lah. Sebab dia very segregated dan very macam block by block lah. Sebab benda tu untuk clear the programmatic wise dan also in terms of macam mana nak pergi ke mana kan. So in the end, I think, ada lagi. This is all the development punya part. Before I ada part yang, sorry. Okay, so untuk explain lagi sikit lah, because this design morphology ni adalah yang di mana untuk show clearly how dekat site punya consideration tu digunakan lah. Contohnya macam kalau kita boleh tengok from the first I initiate, kemudian I did the privacy zoning and then the program punya separation, and I try to basically connect up until to the point yang di mana I kat bawah ni I try to implement the narrative punya tadi strategi tu, dan kemudian I try to simplify balik because untuk add up dia punya workability punya parts, dan in the end until I consider it as a macam I dah consider all this layering macam yang I cakap tadi tu on the theory parts, on industrial layers. So this is the punya in the end final meshing lah, final form lah, bukan meshing lah. So kemudian there's macam apa lagi lah yang ni basically macam this part is macam I cakap tadi, life museum. So apa itu life museum kan? So life museum tu basically this is the section ataupun diagrammatic yang tunjuk the basic idea. So life museum ataupun tiers of education. So dia ada stages of education lah. So yang di mana yang first the process tu dekat all those ground floor. Lepas tu all the life museum yang di mana orang yang akan experience tu akan berada on the first and the second floor. So they will tengok ke bawah what's happening. But then of course this is also after considering dia punya how dia punya planning lah nanti kan. Lepas tu kemudian I also did on the industrial democratic design punya explanation lagi. Maksudnya I elaborate lagi, is I translate it into how I formulate into ke fasad juga. Maksudnya kalau kita tengok sekarang ni macam I try to make use of previously punya teori whatsoever into my strategy lah. So these horizontal layers dekat yang ni basically there are three type of layers, 3 tiers. So the three tiers of layers ni yang basically somehow translate the idea of steward brands tu in metaphorically lah. So my building itself in terms of facade nanti dia akan become some sort of nampak macam stack of layers lah. So but then of course in terms of functionality wise dia akan benefit balik the program itself juga. Kemudian this is also the consideration on the common punya connection. I think this one I can explain on the next chapter so that dia lagi clear. Okay, so for my part I think we should move on to Ash to explain on his part pula.
Alrighty.
Thank you for your explanation, Matt. Sian dia ni kena jump from design to design. Okay, so basically how I did it. So basically from the studies in which I conducted, whether it be through AMALEENA, similar in terms of programs, whether it be the function of the actual typology, to the visionary study of the design, what I vision it to be and stuff like that. Selepas dah go through this, okay, now this is where I start masuk, I guess what you can say, design development stages lah kan. So what I did was, as I mentioned early on within the presentation, what I like to do is a form of mapping. So making sure that things are clear. So this is where basically how I started integrating whether it's site, programs, people, theory, and phenomenology all into each to progressively go from Mass 01 to 2 to 3 and initially lead to the final project, which is Mass 04 lah. So what I did initially was the main focus of my design, which is the spatial sequence, the space itself. So that's what my main focus is on about. So again, what I did was a form of mapping because therapeutic experiences, they are the form of sequence in which you have to go through. So what I did was, of course, basically redraw, revisualize, and then understood each of those programs and the sequence that it takes needed to achieve the therapy that it was envisioned to be lah. So for example, in terms of the main lobby, the Gate of Adam, which is actually a staple of my design. So this is pretty much the communal spaces. Tapi walaupun the communal spaces, it plays a vital role in tying all the programs together. So macam as you can see from my mapping on the left here, you can see it's more of a central, building up from the central nucleus all the way up to the other programs and so on and so forth. So this is basically my study of each of those programs. So what I did was did an in-depth study in terms of the terms used in terms of for each of those phases. So this is in terms of hydrotherapy reasoning, because it's my main program within the design, which is the bathhouse, which you guys will see within the visualizations later. So each of these phases, of course, in which I dissected one by one and then recreated the spatial configuration of each of those programs. And then I went through this phase over and over and for all of those programs. And after reaching the final one, of course, I'll just showcase here for now. So last time I reached what you see on the left, which is a complete mapping of all those programs together, which is filtered out in terms of what's needed, what's not, to achieve the sequence of those therapeutic programs together as one. So that is kiranya the sequencing in which I envision to achieve lah kan. So basically ni boleh masuk site pula, right? Site context in terms of understanding, of course, from all the way from the SWOTs to the elements of the microanalysis and so on and so forth. Lepas dah develop semua, I achieved a form of complex configuration. So dia berpecah, disaggregated. It's not a singular building typology because of the fact wanting to be pieced out. Because then I can make use of internal courtyard spaces dan tu pun ada reasoning dia macam-macam lah. Nanti I explain to you guys if ada masa, kalau tak ada, tak apalah. So this is just showcasing that development of initially, see the first massing, very basic. Moving on, and then I start masuk elements projection. So ni dah masuk in terms of studying the design through perspective of Renaissance. So ni going back to designs by Leonardo da Vinci and so on and so forth. So I dissected those elements. So as you can see on the right here, started implementing them. So this was what I had on STEM Master 03 initially. So it was still very bare because I didn't explore the aesthetic of it yet. Baru I just explore the spatial sequence saja dulu. So as you can see, compared to macam, maybe, I'm not sure lah Ming Amal, tapi mine had a very more progressive step-by-step phase. So macam in this particular scenario, bila sampai Master 03 pun, I tak sampai lagi my imageability. I tak fokus pun lagi on that. Well, of course, other than elements yang kecil-kecil tu, macam you can see the arches and so on and so forth lah kan. Tapi other than that, tak. It's just more on the spatial sequence saja. So then I masuk Master 04 where I focus more on the imageability in terms of what it's supposed to be. So ni dah masuk theory of hybridity. So ni as you can see on the right, the study of hybrid relics. How in the end the design is supposed to project a relic in which is supposed to sustain itself throughout time. So that's the future envisionment of this design lah. It's not meant to be like a facility for 10 years and then hilang. Tak ada. It's supposed to be kalau boleh diguna because it's not something that is based on current times. Dia tak ikut trend. Dia ikut something that has been used throughout millennia already. Macam pyramids, so on and so forth, whatever. They have a function that is stable daripada dulu sampai sekarang. So that's what I was trying to envision within my design as well, through the usage of these natural therapeutic programs lah kan. Because it didn't require, any form such as modern technology pun. Because kalau in terms of the bathhouse, dia pakai the click hamam system kalau Turkish bathhouse designs. So on and so forth. I won't go too much into that lah. So this was basically a development, as you can see on the left. Each of those relics, I designed it individually. And then when pieced together, achieved what's on the right here. You can see from the overall outcome later lah. So this was initially the final massing lah. Okay, I think that's all I can go into because we are short on time as well. I go into some more later if any of you guys are curious lah. Tapi for now, we go into the final.
Okay, there you go. The final chapter, which is to realizing a vision. So the whole point of this from the development stages of the design, from the theories yang tadi dah sembang, the issues yang dikumpulkan, the site context, understanding the reality. Now finalizing that piece together to achieving that final product lah. So basically, as you can see, this is an exploded scheme of each of our designs. So I guess starting things off, Amal, please, would you mind starting things off first?
All right. Is it sharing? Okay.
Can you try one more time? No, not yet. Sorry, I baru just stopped presenting. Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. So
I guess since we have limited amount of time, we just briefly go through je lah, the products je.
Alright, so as you can see, I changed the site so many times, but don't be disheartened. It will be worth it when you find the right site for your project. So just to go through, this is the site plan. The floor plan with having no spaces, it starts from the level 1, which is the T1 educate, and as it go level by level, it goes to T2 educate and T3 execute. So this is the elevation of the building. As you can see, it is sloping down from the west to east side, and this is where the responsive facade is incorporated. And then this is the entrance of the site going into the building, and this is the Jalan Sultan Tengah, and this is the section of the building, section AA. This is the atrium for the building where you can utilize natural daylight into the spaces, having good communication between levels in the spaces. And this, as you can see, the entrance to the site, you have to go up the stairs. Similar approach to indigenous houses where it is on stilt. You have to go up the stairs into the building. So just to showcase the design, this is the entrance to the building where my approach was to have a very minimalistic approach where it still blends with the design. It's not dominant. It blends very well with the surrounding itself. So this is the lamella linkage, having the unobstructed view of the Santubong River with the Santubong cruise, and overseeing the agricultural area outdoors with the Santubong, Mount Santubong behind as a background in the building. This is the drop-off area entering the building, and this is the green ramp going up to the observatory foliage. And then this is more on renderings to show the outdoor spaces, such as this one is on top of the lamella linkage. This one oversees the open cafeteria area. This is the agriculture area below the lamella linkage. This is the entrance to the building, having the bamboo entrance as a significant entrance. This is the general area, the temporary exhibition area where people can gather together. The same approach for barok houses. And then this is the area for the special study with the responsive facade. I can explain later on a bit. This is the research laboratory for the students, because my approach is not having a very formal place for the youth to actually study and engage with agricultural matters. So it's more on the macam homey approach of it. So next is just to finalize my whole design thesis is my special study. So for my special study, alright, so for the special study narrative, it starts back to the issue from the climate change, deforestation, agriculture. Vertical farming, of course, it seems like a plausible solution, but it brings the question, what about the energy consumption? And apparently vertical farming, it consumes 14 times more than a greenhouse, the conventional greenhouse farming. Because as you can see, the most farming is most optimal with natural light. So that's what I utilized along with the responsive facade. And then it is incorporated in the building, and then I've used daylight simulation, VLAX daylight simulation to ensure that the building facade it's incorporated with the vertical farming. This is just an axonometric view of the components of the responsive facade, and in a way that this shows that there's different configuration depends on the time of the day and the amount of daylight received by the plant. So apparently each plant has a benchmark such as 150 ppfd to grow healthily. So in a way that having this responsive facade, it helps the plants and it also helps to ensure that there's optimum daylight inside the building. So that it's a win-win situation, because having this type of responsive facade, it saves 100 square meters of land. Instead of using land for agriculture, we are actually using facade, or the architecture helps to solve it. And in terms of saving energy and also have growth consistency, because having this type of facade, you can actually harvest it every 2 weeks and there's no contamination in terms of pesticides and so on. So I think that concludes my part of design thesis explanation. So I shall pass the mic to Zami to explain. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amal. So basically
Raj
what
was
we
it?
can see is Amal punya approach on the, especially on the sustainable special study, is more towards the green whatsoever, green strategies whatsoever kan. But then of course each one of us basically very different. So untuk me to I showcase my final. So before we moving on to my final punya scheme, I lupa nak present tadi. I just nak tunjuk in terms of dia punya preliminary punya zoning ni, yang di mana based on dia punya this zoning, how I basically translate it into the final layout. So considering this zoning and basically this strategy ni adalah after all those site punya analysis whatsoever. So dia akan ada 3 different blocks. So the first one is the public and the 2 other block is the private punya block. Then okay, so moving on to the final punya scheme adalah okay, so this is the final image ataupun yang scheme of the project. So basically what I intend to do with the design itself adalah untuk show the elements, ataupun bila kita cakap pasal salvage yard, kita akan ingat tempat yang berkarat, tempat yang very rustic tempat kan. So that's the I don't want to, even though we want to redefine the salvage yard ataupun not necessarily salvage yard should be like this, but then of course how I want to portray is adalah untuk tak lupa juga the basically all those parts tu yang boleh jadi contributing factor untuk dia punya how people akan perceive this building lah, maksudnya aesthetic part. Lepas tu kemudian moving on to my plan. So basically kalau based on this plan, generally lah I explain adalah dia ada 3 different blocks, tapi of course kalau tengok kat sini dia macam ada dah connected between 2 blocks whatsoever kan, tapi the initial punya massing tu adalah from 3 different blocks really separated. But then apa kalau kita tengok based on this adalah yang connect dia adalah dia punya circulation tu. Circulation part adalah yang connect each block yang berbeza tu. So okay, set. So my building itself, kalau kita tengok dekat this ground floor adalah all those activity auto recycling, because I want to make sure the workability in terms of dia punya planning, in terms of macam mana kita nak make sure all those auto recycling punya parts tu work very well. So I decided to make it at the ground floor. So all those museum punya parts ataupun yang regarding visitors akan allocate dekat first, second and also third floor. But then tapi kita kena consider because of the typology yang I approach, which is more towards industrial building, macam somehow like warehouse punya design, it is more, kalau kita tengok based on this nanti on the section itself, dia lebih kepada open ataupun large volume punya area. Jadi even though you are at the second or first floor, it doesn't mean dia tak truly segregate clear, maksudnya you can experience what is happening on the ground floor. That's the consideration lah, in a way untuk kita create that lively punya experience, not just from one level, untuk integrate into different levels. Kemudian okay, this is the first floor. Basically first floor is the experiential punya museum punya parts, which is to raise the awareness untuk dengan people tengok all the process kat ground floor. Kemudian and the second floor adalah untuk in-depth punya understanding, dia akan ada private punya workshop whatsoever. So kemudian dekat dia punya dia punya third floor, so third floor adalah the end of dia punya flow from ground to the up. Maksudnya I have the program of recycle and upcycle. So dia ada dua. Jadi contohnya kalau kita tengok macam upcycle itself is a new punya program. Maksudnya bila kereta yang di upcycle bukannya baru. Contohnya kalau kita tengok ada lagi ke kancil yang di upcycle, I mean in this dekat upcycle jadi EV, adakah? Sebab benda tu rarely found lah benda tu. Jadi that's why the idea of having this third floor adalah untuk integrate with the main circulation, the allocation dekat situ juga adalah untuk in a way attract the people from the Jalan Persiaran Kejaya yang basically akan go maybe to another place yang akan lalu guna jalan tu. Dia akan nampak that kind of attraction. Maksudnya kalau kita nak show the recycling process at the front is of course not appropriate. Jadi how we want to tarik orang into this building adalah dengan how we put the most interesting part yang di mana people akan be interested untuk okay, I want to tengok ada that kind of ada exhibition. What kind of exhibition? Nampak macam kereta-kereta ni. When they go to that place, they know this is dia dah upcycle whatsoever. So that's the idea lah behind the every floors yang dah buat tu kan. Kemudian this is another image daripada Jalan Persiaran Kejaya tu. Jadi kita tengok dekat third floor tu basically I put macam one box on top of the depan tu, dekat depan sekali ni ada that circular ramp. Circular ramp tu adalah the point of macam intersection lah, maksudnya di mana kat situ from each floor akan boleh naik sampai ke atas. So itu adalah one of the punya how I want to integrate a seamless punya flow lah. So kemudian this is another view from Jalan Persiaran Kejaya tapi from another side. So this is from the entrance. So basically this entrance, so I want to emphasize on in terms of punya materiality lah, somehow untuk show that the salvage punya gist tu. Kemudian of course dia punya, this is the third floor yang protrude ni, yang cantilevered ni. So this is just the section. Basically section ni adalah untuk tunjuk flow of daripada drop off zone dekat hujung tu, and dia akan di-grid dengan lounge in lobby with all those floating punya whatsoever ni, dan dia akan straight nampak this yard, court yard ataupun yard ni adalah the idea of the salvage yard lah. Maksudnya kalau kita cakap pasal salvage yard, it's impossible untuk tak ada yard kan. Walaupun however I want to redefine it, dia mesti kena ada yard sebab because kita dah guna salvage yard. Tapi then the yard itself of course dia tak digunakan as a tempat untuk letak kereta lah. Dia akan diguna for public punya purpose. Because in the end how I want to integrate dengan museum. So jadi part tu, yard tu the utilization dia berbeza compared to salvage yard yang ni. So that's how I basically define lah. So kereta tu yang selalunya kalau tengok kat salvage yard, dia akan macam maybe kalau salvage yard yang ada yard yang luas, dia akan letak all those kereta kat on the ground. But then in this case, dia akan ada that automated car storage yang benda ni akan relate to my special study juga lah. So this is another section yang untuk show dia punya relationship between daripada Jalan Persiaran Kejaya up until to the recycle punya block dekat bahagian hujung. So kalau you can see all this production zone kat bawah, so all this observatory platform and private workshop semua kat atas. So this is the layers yang I stated earlier. Maksudnya kalau nampak building ni pun very macam tak solid lah. Maksudnya in a way nampak macam very this is facade, this is structure. So dia nampak very layers lah. So benda tu I make it obvious lah. That's how I implement dia punya industrial democratic design tu lah, in a way. Kemudian dan macam saya cakap tadi, in terms of spatial punya narrative yang I nak implement tu ada macam extroverted punya circulation space. So jadi macam circulation space ni of course dia akan attach to each block lah. So kalau kita tengok kan external access ni, so that's the idea lah. So macam ni, macam LRT 3 ni adalah that's the interaction yang I wanted for the particular messing exhibition area tu dapat. Maksudnya that's the interaction yang I want, because in a way people yang commute using the LRT 3 tu adalah people yang akan basically orang yang bekerja, dan in a way benda ni akan somehow pick their pick their curiosity lah to come to this place. Kemudian this is another basically I potong untuk show the programmatic ataupun flow lah dekat this building. So from one point to another point, so kat mana yang akan ada recycle dan upcycle whatever kan. So basically kita boleh tengok two different space yang bahagian depan ni more like towards the public, yang facing towards jalan ni. Yang bahagian hujung ni more towards the auto recycling punya parts lah. Dan yang atas of the front tu adalah of course the punya part of punya ni kan. So this is the view lagi. This is another view. This is the storage punya part. So car punya storage. Jadi kereta yang akan masuk di storage punya part maybe akan varies lah. Tu kereta yang akan recycle ataupun dah siap recycle. So dia akan varies from time to time. Kemudian this is another view from the yard tu. This is a view of my special study juga. Macam mana I integrate dia punya process of auto recycling tu. Macam mana I realizing it. Maksudnya tadi I dah establish the framework, tapi how benda tu nampak. So in terms of component wise, this is what I've created based on my plannings, based on my understanding and my plannings. So I created my own de-assembly line. So that's my special study lah. This is another view. This is the view from the control room. Basically people from this control room akan oversee all this process dekat second floor, dekat first floor and also dekat ground floor. Okay, this is how the ambience of the space, view from the third floor towards the yard. Okay, this is basically the exhibition area. Kemudian I want to show a bit on the industrial democratic parts, yang di mana I consider it part of my structural punya strategi juga. Yang of course kalau kita tengok based on this exploded ni juga, how I consider the integration of the facade as another element, as the skin, and also how it is being integrated to the structural parts. So that's for my structural punya part. This is another view of the section to show the type of layers yang ada lah. This is to label on the layers tu, based on the Stewart Brand punya filosofi tu, teori tu. And also tak nak buang masa lagi, I think last kali nak tunjuk special study sikit je, sorry. Sorry Ash, sekejap ya. Special study, okay, so my special study is the assembly line. So how, macam mana yang based on my planning and also based on my framework yang I dah establish, macam mana I realizing it using the technology punya part. So itu akan menjawab my design thesis statement. Thesis statement adalah untuk create advanced platform for auto recycling kan. So benda tu I somehow try to untuk back towards the thesis statement jugalah. Kita tengok I menjawab tak. So how I use all those technology yang kita guna untuk assemble kereta, but instead kita gunakan teknologi tu untuk deassemble kereta. Because in the end what being assembled can also benda yang deassemble gunakan tu boleh deassemble juga. So based on my case study is the Volkswagen transparent factory whatever. So this is the components yang of the special study yang dekat mana dia punya implementation tu. So the number one yang I just explain briefly. Number one is I use the overhead conveyor untuk upcycle punya block. This is the area and also the details on how the being implement. Kemudian the next one is the vertical car storage, yang dimana akan allocate all those cars masuk ke tempat tu. Kemudian the third one is the goods punya transportation. Basically macam mana from each point tu kereta tu akan ditransport. So kalau kita tengok tadi storage, cara untuk transport dan how benda tu move. So ada 3 benda. So this is basically the assembly punya line yang I created. So daripada kereta start masuk ke dalam the building from dia punya lori, kemudian dia akan go to the storage area. Kemudian dia akan start masuk to the production area after it's being prepared ataupun dah ready. Then after dia dah masuk ke production area tu, it's being go through lah sama ada dia upcycle ataupun recycle. according to the block lah, yang mana yang dah di-allocate tu. Kemudian dia akan either be stored, transport or basically auction. So basically kereta yang dah di-upcycle, contohnya kereta lama yang dah di-upcycle to new macam EV kancil, let's say. So dia akan di-auction. Let's say kalau benda tu tak ada owner, maksudnya benda tu kereta yang dijumpa from yang daripada site punya kereta yang tak ada orang, ownership dia tak ada dah. Jadi benda tu dia akan depends on the apa program yang diguna dan what kind of status of the car itself. I think that's basically lah for my part. Sorry for taking too much time. Okay, I think akan pass to Ash untuk continue. Sorry kalau basically banyak benda yang tak boleh nak explain dan tak clear, tapi basically dia just nak tunjuk dia punya ni lah, just. Okay, Ash, boleh continue Ash, sorry.
No problem, bro. Do you, bah? It's all good. All right. Anyways, due to time, I'm aware. Sorry, organizer. I'll just show lah. I'll just show you. I rasa I tak explain dah kot. Because I know you guys have other things to get done after this. So I guess I'll just showcase this. So basically, this is the visualizations of the project after going through certain developments. So the main lobby itself. So these are just going through the plans, the overall site plan, the ground floor, the basement, the first floor, the second floor, third floor, and roof plan. Very simple. So projections of it on site, of the design. The aerial projection in terms of showcasing the overall site context with the design embedded, as you can see on here where my mouse is hovering. So these are pretty much aerial projections of the design with the site context involved. So several projections of that from the beach, so on and so forth. So all the overall massing, so you can see. So basically this is pretty much the ingress from a vista of the ingress, showcasing the symmetrical configuration of the design. The podium, the exterior podium in which is placed, the main lobby in which the first space in which they are introduced to. So as you can see with the controlled access point, and as you can see from the elements, this is where I started integrating the design elements and so on and so forth. The pathways in which lead to the Gate of Adam, which is the central focus point of my special studies. So these are the courtyards, the control paths that lead to all the other facilities. So from this, when they lead to this central cone, they will then disperse according to their own choice, in which leads them to the program in which they choose to go to. And then we have, of course, the Muse Relic. Then we have, as well as the Garden of Eden. The overall balcony above, right next to the Muse Relic. Then we have an aerial projection of the Gate of Adam. The bathhouse lobby. So this is the main program of the space, as you can see, being projected all the way through to the beach perspective. The interior of the bathhouse. Oh, I can sense it. Sorry. Perspective from the beach itself. A close up of the design. So the overall beach perspective is, as well as the design involved. Several schematics of the design from the elevations to the sections. Some sectional perspectives in which cut way to the Gate of Adam. Oh, sorry, another one right here. And we also have an exploded scheme. Sorry. So yeah, so this is an exploded scheme of the overall floor layouts, cutaway sections of each of those floors. Okay, I won't go into this anymore. So this is just construction. I'll just breeze through this. Nothing to see much here. Well, for the purpose of this discussion today. Okay, fire services. I'll just go straight away to the special studies so you can understand the direction of my special studies. I won't explain about it. I don't think so. Okay, so yeah, the special study is about the study of phenomenology. So as mentioned, phenomenology is very much an anchoring statement within my design. So of course, the Fallen Sanctuary or the Gate of Adam is very much the main focus of this particular study, where I incorporate technology, not just through the strategies of phenomenology, but also technology which aids in enhancing that experience of phenomenology itself. So basically, this is the cycle on the left in which people will go through, ranging from the gate, from the main lobby itself to the sunken paths, all the way to the Gate of Lobby, all the way to the Gate of Adam. All this is pretty much the starting point of this phenomenological cycle. And then, of course, a breakdown of each of those checkpoints with references on the bottom left, as you can see from the passages of studies conducted by several researchers in terms of phenomenology and their impacts on the mental psyche, depending on the elements that are projected. So each of these spaces, there is a certain element in which is projected, basically. And then, so basically, that is explaining the strategy which is used and then the impact of what it does to the person's mental psyche. So need of each of those particular spaces lah. So a bit of Adam, all the way from the mist, acoustic panelings, the rainwater. Basically, this is the climax of the space itself if you consider it within narrative terms. And then last but not least, I guess the cross section. And then of course the implemented items in which are involved within the structure itself to achieve that set phenomenology. And I guess that is it. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry, 15 minit. Extend last. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, boys.
Ada audience yang raise hands. Okay, Cik Al dan Cik Tajul.
Dipersilakan, please.
Okay.
Which one first? Cik Tajul or Tajul Izrin?
Oh, sorry.
Ni susah.
Mana-mana je dulu. Ya, bolehlah. Nampak tadi Cik Tajul yang raise hand dulu.
Okay. Hi and congrats to all three of you. Job well done on your design thesis projects. I have a question, almost similar to our question actually in the chat box. So
Ayo, jangan curi lah.
Tapi actually it's the exact same question lah. Ash asked me right after I completed my design thesis a few years back with Dasat. So his question was, are you satisfied now? If given more time, what more do you wish to do?
I'll let Amal, Zamir, you guys want to start the question?
Ash jawab dulu lah.
Okay.
Silakan.
Me personally, no. I am not satisfied because I know what it can be. Itu je simply my answer. There were a lot of restrictions outside of my control in which resulted to that, but I cannot complain about it. But however, because of the fact that I love what I do, InsyaAllah even after this pun I akan continue sambung je buat kerja tu sampai puati. If in terms of the knowledge gained semua, no, I have no issues. I'm grateful to everyone involved for teaching us and all. Tapi in terms of the work itself, no, I'm not satisfied with what it is. Okay, Zamir, Aman?
For me, I think banyak lagi benda yang boleh develop even though 1 year kan. Because considering our circumstances yang di mana where kita dalam situation yang I think somehow dia limit our exploration juga because most of us ada our cocoon sendiri kan. Kita duduk dekat our own house, our own depan PC, dia tak ada that studio life. I think that part yang can contribute towards more maybe in terms of macam development of the ideas itself. When we see our colleagues punya ni kan, walaupun of course kita ada this session guna Google Meet whatsoever, tutorial session whatsoever, tapi but then I think the studio live and also the front face-to-face punya session tu could help improve design. Dan for me banyak juga benda yang I tak sempat nak buat, especially on the I wish to detail more lagi on the 3D. Basically benda-benda macam tu je lah. On the model tak sempat buat, on the benda-benda macam tu kan, because of the circumstances lah. But then memang tak satisfied lah because banyak benda yang, because this is our final, ada benda lagi lepas ni takkan ada masuk study dah, so should be tak tahulah Amal macam mana kan.
Well, for me it's actually the same. I'm not really satisfied with the outcome. Macam my studio leader pernah tegur sebelum ni macam kau ni research design je mana macam tu lah, because but it's true. I think I can do like way more in designing it, but what I'm very happy about the design is that I was able to do something for my hometown, Kuching, Sarawak. That's what I'm most happy about the design. But overall, in terms of design wise, I know I can do like banyak lagi sebenarnya, but yeah.
Again, Itulah I don't know macam mana lagi nak elaborate on that part, because in the end design takkan pernah puas, so takkan pernah complete kalau still ada time. In the end masih akan ada improvement yang boleh dibuat. So okay, ada banyak lagi question I think yang from the chat box. Untuk Encik Alaiman, ada lagi ke soalan lain ataupun soalan yang sama daripada chat box?
Ada. But,
ada. Okay.
Ya, sebab tapi rasa susah pula nak nulis kan. Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Great works, congratulations first of all. I think malam ni quite menarik juga sebab tengok 3 orang yang present ni dia jadi ada 3 different flavors. Kalau misalnya kalau saya sebagai outsiders lah, I'm not kat dalam your UiTM Puncak Alam. So bila tengok 3 flavors ni dia jadi macam seorang macam Asgardians kan, Ash ni macam Asgardians. Kalau kita tengok macam ni memang very utopian something tertentu lah. Based on his research pun macam kita boleh tahu kita tahu deadline tu kan, your research philosophy paradigm semua benda tu, and that sort of theories yang you propose lah. And then tengok Amal pula tengok lebih kepada country, dia punya touch, dia vibe dia country. And then Zamir pula very industrial kan, dia memang rusty semua benda macam gitu lah. So dia macam give memang interesting lah malam ni. So dia ada come out some beberapa question lah. So tadi soalan pasal satisfaction, okay. Ada satu soalan spesifik lah mungkin kepada Zamir sebab because of I know him personally kan. So are you intentionally bila design yang bahagian dekat industrial democratic design tu dekat machine line tu, right? So you kata tadi macam you guna juga machine line yang dekat kilang assemble cars right now kan, sekarang ni buat, and then you use that the same machine line dekat dalam you punya design proposal. So sama macam terfikir are you intentionally nampak benda tu adalah sebenarnya satu sebab tadi you kata pasal life museum, theory of life museum, right? Lepas tu saya terfikir juga macam mungkin macam kilang yang dekat macam contoh proton kat Tanjung Malim tu nanti dia akan advance. Tukar dia punya machine line dia dengan sekarang dengan AI lah, dengan very robotic semua sikit-sikit kan. But are you intentionally sedar aware that maknanya you mengambil machine line yang previously and put into your design tu adalah basically sebab untuk preserve the vibe of yang you kata recycle tu ataupun vibe of living museum tu. Are you aware of that? Benda tu macam terfikir sebab kalau saya tengok jadi macam quite genius lah, macam maknanya selalu kita pergi museum kita nampak barang tu macam contoh keris, letak keris yang tu kan, and kita preserve keris tu macam tu lah, very static. Tapi how you preserve the machine line, contoh sekarang macam contoh kalau saya dekat Perak, dekat Batu Gajah tu ada panggil kapal korek kan. So kapal korek dia very static kan, kita tengok macam tu je, kita tak rasa vibe tu, and tak macam nampak we preserve and conserve benda tu. But tu lah soalan dia kan, are you intentionally ataupun bila saya cakap you akan cakap lah apa-apa pendapat you lah. Itu soalan spesifik kepada Zamir lah. Okay, soalan nada spesifik dekat Ash sebab Ash tadi kan korang kata dia macam lebih philosophical kan. So macam interesting lah tengok how you think and your punya design talk tu. So, tapi sekarang macam bila you present yang tentang teori tu kan, tu tadi macam terfikir. Tapi saya tak tahu macam mana nak put the words dekat soalan tu lah. Terfikir macam how you control the teoris tu. Macam contoh paling mudah kita kata macam teoris ada banyak. Macam mana you limitkan teori tu into macam 3 or 4 or 5 sahaja supaya dia macam dia tak ganggu you punya philosophical paradigm tu. Sebab I'm lebih interested untuk tengok the process tu. Macam mana you put the theories tu together tu satu hal, maknanya the next phase tu, tapi before you put in together tu macam mana you sorting all that theories kat dalam philosophy tu, and then you kata limit kepada 3 teori ni saja, something macam tu lah. So how you control that paradigm, you punya design thinking tu lah. Itulah soalannya.
Okay, so jawab dulu Okay, so basically untuk soalan Cik Alaiman, initially dia punya idea of untuk creating the assembly line punya components into another, the assembly line punya parts tu intentionally asal je adalah untuk somehow tak nak bagi, because when we talk about recycle punya place ataupun upcycle, kita tengok ada je recycle punya facilities yang digunakan dekat macam salvage yard ataupun scrap yard dekat overseas, tapi but then of course dia tak ada that kind of emphasize on the technological part ataupun dia punya advancement technology part. Jadi dia just macam asal boleh je, jadi kalau kita tengok contradict to the assembly line, bila kita cakap assembly line ni, dia lebih kepada contohnya macam based on my case study from the Volkswagen punya works tu, punya museum, they literally put forth the emphasis on the machinery punya aesthetic tu, how they consider ataupun jaga that aesthetic wise tu untuk create curiosity untuk orang come to the place dan see the process. Sebab kalau tak, in the end, kalau tempat ni just simply recycle dan upcycle tanpa menggunakan that technological punya components, dia akan jadi macam simply workshop. Maksudnya orang just pergi tengok workshop because there's nothing much yang akan pick orang punya interest. Okay, dia tengok ni mekanik buat whatever. Jadi dia tak rasa that kind of feelings yang advanced, tak ada. Dia tak menjawab my thesis statement tu. So in a way macam Cik tanya tu, adakah intentional ataupun unintentional? For me, kalau untuk preserve dia punya hilang punya vibes tu, maybe unintentional. Tapi for me lebih pada how I want to elevate dia punya next level of experience tu lah, live museum tu to another step. Maksudnya orang tak just nampak macam saya cakap lah, tengok workshop, dia tengok something else more than that. Because dekat Malaysia ni tak ada benda tu. Maybe dekat tu pun Volkswagen punya facilities je, yang maybe yang lain-lain punya tu mungkin ada, tapi but then of course different type of, but dia tak ada that particular macam okay, you kena buat macam ni, kena guna komponen ni tak ada. Dia macam it depends on your planning and your requirement. That's harap menjawab lah. Okay, so Ash lah boleh jawab the next question.
Okay, thank you for the question, Chairman. Actually, kalau in terms of the question of the theories tu, the way I conduct my theories is I put in the parameters of which I can control. So maksudnya macam filosofi tu, macam as I mentioned just now, is the guiding principle. So insyaAllah dia membawa kepada end result of phenomenology tu. Tapi in terms of the theories ni, like you said lah, kalau banyak sangat dia tak berada dalam capacity kita untuk handle pula. So I put it in a range in which the parameters are something I can control and elaborate. So what I mean by that, contohnya I had 3 theories, which were geometrical composition, which were narrative, and as well as hybridity. So each of these things tackle a certain aspect of the design untuk capai the overall vision of phenomenology or the impact of phenomenology. So contohnya macam in terms of geometrical composition is more towards that of layout. So sequencing of layout, arrangement, how it fits with the site in terms of that, as well in terms of the 3-dimensional plane lah, in terms of volumetrics. Tapi then, that alone, dia tak sampai a certain message, then comes in narrative pula. So narrative ni provides meaning towards those spaces. How I arrange them. So kiranya ni masuk the strategy of how I arrange the spaces pula. So first was the whole geometrical composition tu, mungkin boleh berkait balik dengan tadi I buat my study of the volumetric studies of the dimensions semua tu. So first was that. Then masuk the sequencing of narrative ni dah start in terms of rearrangement of the spaces, in terms of spatial composition. So ada tadi my mapping of each one of those programs and understanding the sequencing of that. So tu kiranya the midpoint. Bila sampai the final point, which was hybridity, is pretty much compiling all them together. So like I said, macam what the purpose of hybridity ni, dia mencampurkan atau manipulate items to becoming what it was before, so which was maybe normal, to becoming something beyond normal. So kiranya hybridity ni can affect all three ranges. It can affect the space itself, spatial arrangement. It can affect the sequencing of the narrative itself also in terms of circulation, how you are impacted by that, as well as the impact of the detailings and materiality or imageability of the architecture itself in terms of achieving the result of phenomenology. So how I came across semua ni sebenarnya actually is because I study benda ni, I minat benda ni dah lama dah. So slowly I cari these terms, and then I piece together in terms of how I want the brief to turn out to be. So contohnya if I were to do something else, let's say macam contohnya Zamir, I probably wouldn't be using those theories because mungkin tak kena. Tapi depends lah kan. I mean it depends on our design development. Tapi I hope that answers your question lah. Basically to summarize, I put it into a compilation of parameters in which I can control. Benda yang luar control, my control, I don't put theory on that. Contohnya a theory of controlling human behavior, I don't do that because I don't know the outcome. It's not something I can control. So I always put theories on those parameters in which I can control. Stop pausing. Siapa punya mic on tu?
Baik.
Stop pausing. Okay, well, tapi yeah, basically itu answers my question lah. Sorry, answers your question. Sorry, hopefully. Tajuk dengan Nik Zamir. Okay, you
Zamir first.
Zamir first.
Okay.
Hello.
Zamir.
Hello, three of you. Just continuation from Al punya question tadi on the philosophy. Philosophy kan, what do you guys think? Is it a must for you guys to actually follow the philosophy, and is there any room for argument for any philosophy yang you pilih? Maybe this one also could be a misconception for philosophy lah. Should we as a student, can we argue the philosophy or we just follow the philosophy yang kita dah pilih? Okay, thank you.
You guys want to answer? Amal, Zamir? Ada nak jawab?
Silakan.
Kenapa? Filosofi memang you punya forte.
Sorry. Ni my personal opinion lah kan. Sebenarnya in my opinion, after putting some thought kan, sebenarnya we all dah ada a form of philosophy. It's just a matter kalau kita tahu ke tak dia benda tu. That's the whole purpose of knowledge. Without knowledge, we don't know what philosophy is. Contohnya macam I bring up the example of Islam. Islam is a way of life for us, you know. It's our philosophy as Muslims in a way, right? So tapi without knowledge, you don't know that. Without reading, without understanding what it was, you don't know that. So macam in my opinion, macam Zamir mention tadi, kita perlu ke tak filosofi ni sebenarnya? Sebenarnya kita semua dah follow certain philosophy dah. It's just, that's my opinion. It's just kita tahu ke tak filosofi tu apa. Itu je sebenarnya. So once you do, macam contohnya if your design jenis yang nak cepat, fast, laju semua, there's a philosophy for that. It's just that you have to find out what that philosophy is. I mean, because philosophy down to its term is a guiding line. So lalas, that's what it is. It's a guideline, right? So sebenarnya all in all, I think we all already have a philosophy. Is just kalau kita tahu ke tak benda tu, kalau kita kaji ke tak benda tu, tu je lah basically. So in my opinion, yes, we do need a philosophy in design and everything else, because dia macam aturkan a form of guideline for us to follow. So I do believe we do need it lah. Tapi yelah, I don't know the opinions of Zamir and Amal lah, macam mana?
Sorry. Kan you need or not, my question is, if you have that philosophy, is it a must for you to follow that philosophy, or you can argue
Okay. Faham. For me, you can argue. Personally. Dia macam for me personally, because we all have our thoughts, right? Tapi then you argue pun, what are your facts to argue? What are your counter facts? Because contohnya every form of philosophy dia ada facts dia, right? Dia punya statement, dia punya supporting data, whatever it may be. You can argue, no problem. I don't believe in the fact that you have to bind yourself to a certain rule, but what is your reason for arguing it? Tu je kot. I think that's it for me lah. Dia macam you can argue, definitely you can. Tapi what is your reason? Tu je.
I think as long as there's justifications,
Betul.
there's always room for argument.
Ya, betul. I mean, but then kalau sebab kau macam tu tak adalah reason for critique kan. Nanti semua orang main blindly follow, tak ada guna juga, tak tahu benda tu betul ke salah kan. So macam, I mean that's my opinion lah. Of course, I don't know lah. So
Agree. Okay, thanks.
okay, thank you.
Alright. Sorry guys, unfortunately we are very short in time.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on to the closing ceremony after
Alright.
this. So, but first of all, I would like to thank the ex-unique, Amal, Ash, and also Zame for giving that talk. Thank you for sharing your guys' inputs. It is very beneficial for us all. So, without wasting any time, we would like to move on to the closing ceremony now. And first of all, I would like to invite the President of Akisa, Aiman Al-Fahmi bin Abdul Kashaf, to give a short speech regarding this semester review.
Right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much for all the speakers just now. It's actually opening up our eyes. Basically, everyone have different dimensions of, doing designs, and I think these three people has illustrated the best design, especially in this level, that we all can benefit from. So sorry, before that, I want to say welcome to all the lecturers, also all my friends and alumni are here. That shows how much this talk is very great and very insightful and fruitful to all of us. All right, just like our KPP said, tonight is the most favorite talk, I can say that. And concluding all the event, I would like to thank first of all Vorteza Studio for actually organizing a very great event throughout this review. It is the requirements of all architecture students school to have review, and I think this review, which is kind of different from before this because of the PKP that we have in our country. But putting aside, I think Vorteza have made this review a success, including the talks and everything. I will not waste any time. For that, I would like to say that this is maybe the final event for this semester. I would like to congrats the graduations studios, especially the X unit. Congratulations on your graduation, and also from the BSc, which is Cryptech Studio. Congratulations. See you guys again if we met, or anyone from the UiTM alumni met outside UiTM, maybe we can just met and we can actually speak about UiTM, which is a very great architecture school that we are in. So sebelum saya menutupkan kata-kata, sebentar tadi adalah satu program yang sangat bagus dan harap dapat diteruskan pada masa akan datang. Sebenarnya kita berkongsi ilmu, berkata-kata ataupun bercakap mengenai ilmu ni adalah satu amalan yang sangat bagus. It is part of the three main amalan yang tidak akan disekat lah walaupun di dalam kubur, iaitu ilmu jariah ataupun ilmu-ilmu yang kita share, orang lain menggunakan juga ilmu tu, pahala tu pun akan dapat jugalah kat kita di kubur nanti. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you very much. We can proceed to the next event or the next program. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Alright, thank you Aiman for that sweet message. So now we move on to the second speech from President of EUREKA Review, Amir Qayyum bin Ramli.
Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, my name is Amir Qayyum, or can call me Yeme. First of all, I want to say Alhamdulillah that we reached to this point. We never imagined that this day would come after all the hardships and sacrifices and hurdles that we've gone through to make this program a success. So first of all, thank you for our KPP, Madam Nikki. Unfortunately, she couldn't manage tonight, but she told me to send her regards and thanks to all the speakers and all those who participated tonight. And then thank you also to Akisa advisors, Encik Asin and Encik Azlan, if they're joining us tonight as well. And lastly, thank you Akisa for giving us this great opportunity to hold such an event. Then I can't thank enough my team, especially High Committee, my exco, and also especially the facilitators, because for your information, this is like the first time of Vorteza to handle an event, such a big event for the first time as well. And it's gone through virtually, so it's a different game from last semester. And shout out to Namada Studio as well for giving us a lot of exposure, giving us all the insights of what an architecture review really means. So next is thank you to all that have supported and give a very positive feedback on our event, especially the lecturers. And also we had a lot of positive feedback from outsiders as well, from other universities. So I think we've proudly to say we've managed to pull through a very successful event, inshallah. And then that's all I want to say. Just the biggest lesson that I just want to share to everyone that I've learned through this first event is through collaborative work. And I want to say that it's very good exposure to juniors and also other people to host an event for the peer learning as well, and also the adaptive development that we've gone through, because this review has developed a lot from the beginning, from scratch. So with that, I want to rasmi lah that Eureka Architecture Design Review ends here, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yeme, the President of Eureka Review, for organizing this amazing event. And with that said, we would like to play a montage of this semester review, marking the end of the whole review session. With that said, enjoy. All right. With the end of that montage just now, it is also the end of this semester review entitled Eureka Review. So I would like to give a special thanks to Head of COSA, Madam Nikki, for actually supporting us throughout our journey, and also all of the COSA lecturers and students, and also all of the studios that have been participating in this year review, and also all of the participants tonight for joining us and memeriahkan majlis sepanjang kita punya Architalk session. And I, as the organizer of Architalk punya session, I'm very sorry if there's any mistake or misjudgment from my behalf, and hopefully we all can meet next semester in another review with all of the awesome works from you guys. So with that said, I would like to thank everyone. Enjoy your sem break, and yeah, see you guys later next semester.
Short photo session ada.
Oh yes, I forgot. So before we leave, we would like to have a short photo session with everyone. So everyone, if possible, you can turn on your cam and we will take a photo for our documentation. Alright. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us throughout this whole Eureka review, and I wish you all the best for our next semester, and also for the one that graduating, all the best for your next endeavor. Thank you everyone. This session shall be dismissed.
Thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for inviting, and thank you for staying until to the end.